Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're on time with our coaching AMA. Hair's a little messy. I just got my water, my laptop set up, so everything's a little scuffed right now, but good to see everybody. I have a lot of questions already, which is really exciting. In case you guys, for those of you that are here, !submit, get into !Discord, submit your question in the coaching channel that should be open to everybody that's joined the Discord. So I'm asking that people do that. Not as like some plug to get into my Discord, just so I can actually keep track of the questions and so they don't get buried in Twitch chat, because I'm going to try and be maybe not super thorough, but at least answer every question to a reasonable degree, and I don't want to miss any. Yeah, anyway, hope everyone's doing well. I really appreciate the support over the retirement announcement. I was the recipient of over 100 messages over Discord from individual people, so that was super flattering, super kind. If you guys were one of those people, I really appreciated it. I knew every single one of you to some degree. So I really, really appreciated all their super kind messages. I'm actually going to post a live announcement on Twitter real quick with coaching AMA. I've been on Twitter way too much recently. So that was... I got it! Oh, yeah. Hey, thanks for the sub, Pear. Appreciate it. But yeah, we're going to try and get started in just a couple minutes because we do have a lot of questions. I'm trying to kind of do this whole AMA thing, but also kind of keep up because my team is, or Sheercold is participating in EBC tournament today. So I'm trying to kind of keep half an eye on that. Ling Ling, thank you for the sub. 3 months in a row. I really appreciate it. Yeah, the big thing. Okay, so like, I guess it's just a quick debrief for those of you that are here. Essentially, this is pro coaching AMA, anything to do with coaching Overwatch at the professional level. I've been lucky enough, fortunate enough to be able to have experience coaching at really every level except the Overwatch League level, and I've dipped my feet in there. I've worked with a lot of Overwatch League players. I've worked with a lot of Overwatch League coaches, and ultimately I did have my Overwatch League level trial, which obviously, as you guys know, didn't work out. But long story short, I do have experience at essentially every level. I've coached Diamond, Cruddy, Goofy teams. I've coached Masters teams, Tier 3. I've coached Tier 2 and then top of Tier 2 as well as working with an academy organization. And obviously with Cindy Drop Bears, that was a non-academy, but another organization in of itself as well. So I have a lot of insight working with signed teams, non-signed teams, the whole 9 yards, and also coming up as a player. So I'm going to try and answer everything thoroughly. If you're looking for like juice and leaks, not really the time or place for that. But I am going to answer every question as thoroughly and as accurately as I possibly can. Any secrets or information that you guys want to know about coaching at a pro level. So again, !Discord. In the Discord, you will find a channel near the bottom of the coaching subsection called Coaching AMA, and you can put your question in there. Okay. So guys, last question before we get started. Does anyone know of like actually decent like classical non-copyright music playlist? Because this whole DMCA thing is paranoid me, but I don't want just dead silence. If this is going to be a lot of talking and drawing, if you guys know anything, like, I'm scared. It's going to work. If you guys have any suggestions, easy for Sheercold? I hope so. Use Wear the Hood at DMC free classical music. All right, I'll do that really quick. DMCA free classical music. Something that's just like without lyrics, just something that I can just kind of like chill to. Play Mozart, and that's as long as it's a random. Hello, there we go. I don't know what happened. I must have bumped my mic. This okay? I might turn it down just a tad. Can I turn it out? Oh, please. Ah! There you go. Okay, we're gonna go with that. Baggins messages me this. Okay, Baggins, remind me if I have issues with this. I'll go check that out. Okay, we're gonna go and get started then. Okay, again, posture check. Coaching AMA, I'm not here to answer questions, at least very much about meta and like, how do I climb it Overwatch? Screw it. We're focusing on pro coaching, team coaching, individual coaching, anything that I can. We're gonna go get right into it. Okay, starting at the top. I'm gonna pull open my Epic Pen and then we're gonna get Rick rolling right in here. When a player or a team is in a slump, what's the best way to help them turn it around? Okay, so first off, define slump. Sometimes when we're defining slump, you can mean essentially a performance slump. So in other words, we're not performing at the level that you want to. It could be an attitude slump. It could just be a motivational slump. And honestly, there's like different ways you have to handle the different situations. If it's a performance slump, as a coach, I can understand that, but you kind of have to figure out like what's causing you to underperform. Maybe you don't have a great read of the meta. Maybe the players aren't performing up to snuff because of something else. Oftentimes a performance slump is a sign of something else that's an issue, not just, hey, we're not playing the game right, but why are we not playing the game right? Oftentimes there may be a trust issue or a communicational error or something along those lines. But like, let's say it would be a slump just in a very general sense of the word. Performance, everybody's not very motivated. So you need to talk with the players and remind them, okay, why are we here? What are we doing this for? Are we doing this to win a bunch of games and to be successful? Are we just doing this to get better, to improve? And I think ultimately, any goal that you might have comes from the inside goal of just wanting to improve. Like, you'll get better, you'll accomplish all these things once you improve. So you should be putting your focus on the improvement and not so much as the slump itself. So number one, obviously figure out if it is something within the team, if there's any sort of internal conflict. And I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but I think the best thing that I always did whenever there was any sort of a conflict or frustration within the team is get the team together and just set aside time to just talk. To just talk and be there to kind of lead and moderate the discussion. You know, people getting heated, obviously encourage that to not happen. Remind them that this is supposed to be productive and that we're supposed to be solving a problem. But like, have the players talk. You know, why do we think that we're in a slump, guys? Like, what do we think is going on? Is it like a lack of trust? Do we think we don't have a good read on the meta? And just have a conversation. And obviously the goal should be to come up with a conclusion at the end. But there were a lot of times, especially early on in my coaching career, where we ran into issues with teams that really would have just been better with frank, open conversation with the team as a group. Not individuals, but everybody in the same voice talking together. And the first time you might do, like if you ever run to a slump, it's not always easy. Sometimes, you know, a few players talk up more than others. But like, you need people to like, and sometimes it can honestly, the slump could just be like, I don't feel like we're on the same page, or I disagree with this, and just conversing and sorting out all those things can really change like how a slump feels. Like you'll walk away from it like, okay, I know what the issue is. Like players had lost a lack of motivation of grinding because they felt like we weren't really playing the right comp or playing to our strengths. But now that everybody got together, they were able to voice their concerns and we have something to work on. Or maybe so-and-so had a really problem with so-and-so. They thought that they were talking like disrespectfully and really, you know, it led to some internal like tension with the team. Or, you know, we've been really struggling and the team thinks that's because we're just not grinding hard enough in rank or not ribbing. But like whatever is causing the slump, you need to converse with that. Like the thing with a leader, thank you, Smith S. Hi, how are you? The thing a leader has to understand is you don't have to be the person that knows the answer to everything. Like I wouldn't go into the meeting and be like, I know what the issue is. You just need to be the person that fixes it. And you could be the person that fixes that by having that meeting, having the players talk, you join in, and that something comes as a result. You take initiative for fixing the problem, not necessarily having the knowledge of exactly what the solution to the problem is in the first place. Like you're the guy that drives the player to the doctor, the team to the doctor, you know, and the doctor is having them talk to each other. Like you don't have to be the smartest guy in the world. Just take the initiative to try and figure it out. Oftentimes performance slump is purely emotional and communicational. Absolutely. I hope that kind of answers that question. That's a big question, but I try to touch on as much as I can. How do you handle the hit to your ego when someone slams their coaching higher than my ego, excuse me? This happened a lot. Like I've talked about this already a little bit before, but this happened a lot, especially in when I was a lower rank and coaching lower levels. But I always handling the hit in terms of like how it therapeutic. I mean, I don't know, like go take a bath, it's going to be different for each person. But in terms of like how I actually handled the situation, I just remind myself, you know what? It's understandable that they have this question. So like, let's put it this way. Whenever I taught MMA, there were always people that would come into MMA with a mindset that if I learn this really cool move, I'll be able to beat up a 300-pound man that's 8'4" and 2% body fat. And they always come in with that impression. And every single time there's somebody new, that I have to kind of address that, like that false impression that's a thing, right? So it got tiring. But it's just something that you got to do. It's understandable why people think that, you watch the movies, you see these like skinny little chicks and skinny little dudes that are just slamming around these huge, strong men. And that's just not how real world works in MMA. So when you get into, Overwatch, and there's people that are like, oh, you can't coach unless you're a higher rank than me. That's also a very understandable and very common impression that a lot of people get. So you handle the hit by going, you expect it. Like it's just human nature. People have bad impressions of things. So you expect it. You don't sweat it. And I think the biggest thing is to say like, yeah, I'm a lower rank, but that's because I spend more time actually studying the game than I spend playing it, right? I know I have the knowledge, but I don't always go I don't actually train it into my muscle memory to actually apply it in game. So what you could all I want you to do is just take my advice at face value, and you can choose to apply it or not. But take my feedback at face value, and judge it based off of how good the advice is, not what my rank is. Posture check. Screw you, easy bot. I swear. Posture check. But a team is fighting amongst themselves, almost in a sort of a power struggle. What is your way of approaching the problem? How do you get people who play different styles of the game to agree on a certain strategy? Okay. So this is a difficult question. The realistic way of looking at it is there are going to be many situations, and even most, where it is going to be impossible to get everybody agreeing that X is the best way of handling things. Hey, Frosted. It's going to be impossible. But part of being a good team member, a good teammate, is knowing when to compromise. Because you compromise not because it's the nice thing to do, even like that's great, but because it's the most effective thing to do. And I think as a coach, that the biggest thing that I would always hammer in, and it took time to set in, but it was like a priority for me as a coach, is to hammer in, guys, it's not necessarily what we do or how we do it. It's the fact that we're doing it together, and that it's going to take compromise from you, player one, and sometimes you player 2, and sometimes you player 3. And I'm not expecting you to always believe that whatever we're doing is the best, but I want you to understand and believe that as long as we're doing it together, that's more important than always choosing the best strategy. And then also reassure them that, hey, listen, if this really doesn't work, I am absolutely willing we can adjust. Right? And I think a lot of players find a lot of like, for example, the power struggle. Like maybe there's one player that wants to be shot calling and taking lead over plans, and there's another player that also wants to be taking shot calling and leading over plans. You could say, listen, the team discusses it. There's some debate. There's some argument. Maybe there's some heat in it, right? But ultimately, you kind of get a feeling of like where the team is leading to, or maybe you feel like I think as a coach, like I'm going to recommend that we go this way. But you remind, hey, listen, we're going to give this a shot. I think this will work. I need everybody on this team. Adjust my camera to be like full in on this. But if it doesn't work, and if we don't see improvement, then we can adjust. I mean, there's a lot of times where I felt like, I made a decision where I didn't really feel, or the team made a decision that I didn't really feel everybody wasn't really full, like, bought into it, But I would always say, hey, listen, if this doesn't work, we can adjust. There would be a lot of times where we'd decide to try a composition, and I'd be like, maybe the team doesn't really have full buy-in. I'd be like, listen, we're going to give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, we can adjust. We will fix it. But the players need to have confidence that you're going to, like, if something's not working, if something's bad, that you're not just going to let it go and just be mediocre, that you'll actually take the steps to adjust. So to address your problem succinctly, it's okay to have a power struggle. You need to work. There's no simple, oh, just say this and everything's fixed. But you need to build a culture where players, number one, will trust that you will help solve problems. And number two, maybe most importantly, they need to understand that power struggle is normal, different styles and different ideas are normal, and that getting on the same page is always more important for performance, not just being nice, but performance in the short term and long term. Because it's teamwork. It's what it is. Find a new insult. Baggins, you're not even worth the time to find a new insult. There's your insult. I'm not even going to take the time to look up or put any amount of my brain cells devoted to your bizarre and like ridiculous request. Okay. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. And again, a lot of the answers to these questions aren't going to be, oh, just do this and fix it. But it's about like it's a step. You start today explaining to players that this is important. Right? And you start building that culture, and over time, like it's gotten to the point where like teams like Sheer Cold, where I felt like I really did a good job, like everybody knew and really believed that we just had to be on the same page and it would work out. We still had power struggles, we still had issues and debates and discussions, but at the end of the day, the players understood the importance of being on the same page at the end of the discussion, so it made those discussions more productive. And you just have to, it takes time to build that. Okay. What is the best way to find your style of coaching and whether or not you work better as an assistant coach, head coach? That's a tricky one. I don't think there is a really life hack to do it. I think you just have to get into it and find out what fits you. For me, I'd always been relatively bossy and more of a leader style type of guy. So I kind of always felt like I would be a better head coach. And I feel like I have done a decent job at head coach. But I have also worked in several situations. Like when I was the head instructor at MMA school, I was... at the same time, I was the leader, the boss, but also not the boss because I was the head instructor of the school, right? That was my school to teach, but I wasn't the owner of the organization. I wasn't the owner of the quote unquote franchise, the MMA school. And so, you know, he would, the owner would have a vision for how things would be taught because he knew more about martial arts than I did. And he'd be like, all right, this is what I want us to teach. And then obviously I'd give feedback and adjust it to my school, but I have to follow his vision. So like you just have to kind of get into it. I would say you could definitely give both a shot. I never really worked much as an assistant coach, but I know that I would have had a good time being an assistant coach. I'm very confident in my one-on-ones, like my micro individual coaching. That's probably my strength when it comes to assistant coaching, because I felt I had a really good understanding of how every hero kind of ticks and works, and I was very good with working with players one-on-one. I mean, you guys have seen my sub-VOD reviews. Obviously, I'm the nicest and sweetest guys in stream. But yeah, like you just have to kind of get into it. I would ask yourself, would you like to be taking responsibility for a team, or would you prefer to kind of work in the shadows and work more on like the individual stuff? But also you have to understand, like, what do you actually enjoy? Do you like the strategy? Do you like studying compositions and like, or do you like working one-on-one? Do you feel like you have a really good understanding of support, but you're not very good at tank or heals? Maybe you're like a top 500, Mercy player and a Lucio player, but you don't know anything about tank, So that obviously limits, at least right now, that limits your scope hold. Are you like a very vocal, not so vocal? But just start. By Zenith over at Drifters, a head coach I have a lot of respect for, started as an assistant coach, and he worked himself up to be a head coach. Because it started to be something that he was very interested in, and so he made sure he did a good job at it. But you just have to kind of start and see what happens. But you'll have an impression of what to try. I don't know if this is allowed, but what was the team most got head coach for? I'm sorry, I can't answer that. There's not a respect for the team, because honestly, I was very disappointed and frustrated. But I would never for the organization. I'm frustrated, but I understand. So I don't want to throw anything or anybody under the bus. That's extremely unfair of me. So I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. Hey, Spal, how do you turn thousands of hours of research into an actual plan for yourself and your team? As team captain and invalid the last 3 years, it feels as if I've watched every YouTube video on Overwatch there's ever been. From first fight content to Eagles, Cats, Owl reviews, to reading Isaac's Turn, Paper, and Goats. Nothing has helped. I don't believe you can know too much about the subject, but it's possible you haven't organized the information properly. What's a good roadmap to climb into Tier 3? Recommendations for more content. Also appreciate watching debates. Not as good as playing the game for me. Sorry about tryouts. It's very good. That's good. Nice with you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So this is a really good question, and this is this is just a good life advice. So knowledge does not equal experience. I have infamously, at least on stream, talked about how I have a bachelor's in finance, but how I really disliked the whole experience of getting a bachelor's degree, because finance is something that I chose not to pursue, but I would have learned more. Instead of spending 4 years for a college degree, about 3.5 years, I was a little faster. I would have learned more serving a 3 or 4 month internship for any financial institution than I would have over the 4 years of receiving my college degree, of which 2.5 years was actually studying finance stuff. So I believe that actual application, conscious application experience are 4, 5, 10 times legitimately, like mathematically, more valuable than education. Infinitely more valuable. So when you talk to me about how you study a lot of research, and I can sympathize or relate to that, because that was me, especially when I first got started in coaching. Like even up to the last several weeks, like constantly digesting and ingesting as much advanced content. Like obviously I've gotten a little pickier as I've gotten better of anything that I can learn, right? But actually taking it to an actionable plan is a different story. And that actually takes conscious effort. For example, don't just look at my First Fight concept series. Look at how it would apply to your team. Don't just look at some of the concepts that Egoist Cat talks about, but apply it to your team. Don't just read ISX Term, Pair, and Broke Go. It's like, think about, okay, how would this apply to my team? Like, actually take the information, chew on it, then apply it. And it's, in a way, my ability as a coach, like I joked about how I felt like I always learned more between teams when I was between seasons, because that's when I'd always ingest a lot of information. But it didn't make me a better coach. It made me maybe a little bit smarter, but I wasn't able to actually coach my team to do better more. It was when I was actually in the season, working on my communication, working on problems, spectating scrims, seeing like how the game worked and paying attention, that I actually improved. So you as a team captain, it's good that you're processing this information, but this is meant to be applied. Like I used to call them the Jane viewers. It applies to my stream too. But the Jane viewers are the people that know everything about the game, but they're still plat, right? And that's okay. Like some people just love educational content, but watching a lot of streams and knowing a lot of stuff means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Like I am legitimately smarter than probably most, if not like the vast majority of Overwatch League players when it comes to the game, micro and macro. I know that sounds extremely egotistical to say, but I know it. But there's no, like, I'm flipping diamond. You know what I'm saying? Like, I used to be GM on support, but like, I'm diamond, man. I'm a scrub. Because you put me in the game and I'm like, right? You know? Because it takes a lot. It's not just about playing the game. It's also coaching as well. It's not good enough to know a lot of stuff as a coach. You have to actually go out and coach it and lead and be an example and know how to communicate with your players. So as a team captain, you've watched everything, you know everything, but you're struggling to actually apply it in game. Well, start right there. Red flag. Good job. You've addressed the problem. You know there's a problem, that you're not good at actually applying the information. So right now, why are you as a team not improving? Why are you as an individual not improving? Fix it. Is it a problem with map control? Is it a problem with old economy? Is there communication that could be more efficient? Are you guys as a team trustworthy? Are you wasting time with the reviews? Are your reviews efficient? But you have to start somewhere. And posture check, thank you. And that's how you start, because that's when the real improvement starts. Yeah, because that's where the real improvement starts. And I know, and I like my suggestion is to get your butt in gear. That's my suggestion. Like I know, like education, reading books is not going to make you a doctor. You can know everything about the human body, but until you actually cut open somebody, you know, or actually have a sit down and have a diagnosis and work with people in person, it's not going to matter, right? Hey, Fave, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Have you ever had a bad experience as coaches? Maybe either an unhealthy environment, toxic players not playing? Yes. So I coached a team where we had a lot of egotistical players, a lot of players kind of like what Whistle was talking about, a lot of infighting, power struggle, that kind of stuff. Very player-led team that I joined, and I was a relatively inexperienced coach. Very toxic, a lot of infighting, very talented team, but just an absolute train wreck. And eventually, and I've spoken about this before, but eventually it broke down to where it was like the players wanted to kick a player, and then I didn't think that was the right thing to do, and then I just wouldn't, and the management sided with it, and so I said, screw this, I'm not coaching for you guys, and I quit. And I think it was like one of those situations where I was too focused on like coaching the gameplay instead of like building a better environment. Like as soon as I got into that environment as a more experienced coach, I understand that I should have immediately worked on addressing the distrust, the ego, the lack of communicational structure that was in the team, and let them play the game. Like it just wasn't as important. They were talented, they knew their stuff. It just wasn't like that was not a priority for that team. Maybe I could have fixed it, maybe not, but that should have been my priority right away, and I was way too slow. But that stuff happens a lot. I have been relatively lucky to where that hasn't happened to me a lot. I mean, obviously Uprising Academy, but I don't think that was toxic players, people not willing to be coached. That was just unfortunate circumstances, an organizational philosophy that I didn't really buy into. And then a lack of confidence, and then I'm not going to go over the whole Uprising thing again, but it wasn't exactly really a toxic environment, but I have worked in those before. So I think as a coach, the best thing that you can do is address the environment, address the experiences, talk with the players, explain to them the importance of teamwork and being good teammates. Set goals for the team in that regard. Work at that. I worked with a player not long ago who had a terrible mental, and we improved that player to the point to where he was one of the star players in the team and a huge part of our team's success. But we were this close to kicking him multiple times, but he significantly improved and was worth all the effort. Your experience might not be like that. Your experience might mean, the player just needs to be kicked eventually. But you need to treat it as that is what you work on, and you prioritize that even over the other things. And honestly, you need to take responsibility for it too. Like I look back at that and I'm like, I know for a fact that the team I coached that was super toxic, that one team, I could have done a better job. 100% sure I could have done a better job. Can you tell the story of how you felt in the second round of Anubis versus Obey? As a viewer, that was a massive roller coaster, and what it was like for the staff. It was awful. I was almost in tears at multiple points because I felt like this was it, and I was really disappointed. That was one of the situations where we forced the Mercy stuff, and I really was not happy that we were forcing the Mercy stuff. But most of the emotion was coming from the last defense, and I thought, man, this is it. Like all my work over years, and it's just going to come down to this, and I got more emotional. Like I just was sitting there thinking like, this is it. And Alex feeds. Alex, who's like one of our most consistent, most talented, excellent player, he feeds on first defense. And we're like, okay, that's it. We've lost. They're going to get one tick and we're going to lose. And then we just clutch it. I don't know how we did it. And then Alex feeds again. And we clutch it again. And in the last fight, we clutch it again. And the communication, I get chills just thinking about it, man. Like that was a situation where I looked at those players as like, guys, we refused to lose. We refused. It was sheer willpower. I mean, it was the macro and the discipline, but at that moment, it was just the players saying, we're not going to lose like this. We will not. I refuse. And you can't VOD review that, man. It was one of the greatest moments of me as a coach. I get just chills thinking about it, man. And we obviously, we still ended up losing, but we did that. We won the next map, and we earned respect for what we did there. The players earned respect for what they did there. That is just saying, that's just on another level. But my emotions were awful. I think Beth at one point posted a picture of me, and that was I believe, I don't know when she took the picture because I was not paying attention whatsoever, but I think that was around there because I remember I was like completely zoned by unbelievable defense. It is a shame that not more people won't know about that and know about the history behind that. I might have to post a communication of that. I like you guys would be, if you guys got access to the communication to that, you wouldn't believe the clutch. I'm gonna telling you that the sheer cold is on another level, man. I'll tell you what. What is the most biggest recently? Most biggest trap, easiest mistake to make that you encounter with macro analysis in Overwatch and your own analysis with others? I think the biggest trap and easiest mistake to make is not properly prioritizing everybody being on the same page. Like, you can look back at Overwatch League and you could see the vast majority, I'm saying the majority of team fights lost is because so-and-so is pushing while so-and-so is backing up, or we're going in while they're needing help, or they use a cooldown now, but they're actually pushing 2 seconds later. And it's just not everybody doing something at once. Not necessarily diving, but like clearing an angle or rotating in or doing a cooldown trade with the Reinhardt swings, right? And you could break down so many fights to, man, this team just seems really disjointed with, or this team is, everybody's like all on the same page, all doing it at the same time, all doing it at the same. And I think for me as a coach, my macro analysis missed a lot of that early on, especially. Like I'd focus on like, well, they shouldn't be using their cooldown like this. Instead, their cooldown should be this. But ultimately, it's more about like when you're actually doing it and doing it at the same page. I remember when there was, when I was between teams after Uprising Academy, I offered VOD reviews for any tier 2 teams that were interested, and I got a lot of offers. So I got to work with a lot of contenders teams in North America and Europe. And the thing that I always hammered home in my reviews is like everybody be on the same page, and how you needed to work on your communication, your leadership, and your synergy to get to where that was like second nature. If you're not on the same page, it doesn't matter how good your macro or understanding of the game is, it's not going to work. So I think like macro analysis, the biggest thing to look at is like, okay, which team was more on the same page, which team was more synced with what they were doing. That is like beyond important. And macro and map control are definitely important as well. Old economy too, but I think those are even secondary to everybody being on the same page. That's why some player-led teams do so well, because even though their macro is weak, they're good listeners, right? And they're used to working together. So, for each role, what heroes change their playstyle most from solo queue to professional team games? Give me a second. Let me pull open a list that way I don't forget any. Okay. Roadhog is pretty consistently the same in ranked and solo and team play. It's very much control an angle, control a flank, off angle threat. Maybe Orisa or Winston? Because a lot of the Orisa metas are very much Orisa-led, at least recently, especially with the Bat Brig. Thoughts on Bastion double shield brawl comp? It works if you just don't pay attention to what's going on. Like, it is unironically an excellent cheese. It's like Ryan Winston. It actually takes effort to counter. So I think people joke about how they're trolling. You guys aren't trolling. It's a good cheese. And when you're playing it with Bat Brig, it's literally like you just get first point for free. If British Hurricane doesn't scout you, which they didn't, they had no idea that you guys were clearing Hagen or weren't paying attention, then first fight lost instantly. And once you lose first fight in a Rialto in that forward corner, you get first point for free, which if you get first point for free, then you have a potential to snowball. And you guys should have snowballed that. You choked on second attack. You should have capped 3 easily, because everybody knows how second Rialto goes. If you don't snowball it properly, you're screwed. You're going to be stuck crossing bridge, which I appreciate the Symmetra swap too, but I think it's good. I think it's good. And it's the same thing as Orion Winston. It's a strategy that actually makes sense. It's not just funny troll. It makes sense. And I think you played very well in the Bastion. Orisa in ranked is a little bit more passive and slow, and you don't always have guarantee that people are going to follow up on your halts. And there's also like the thing with Orisa is you shield, you halt, and you're looking for Fortify to either sustain to hold your space or to push space or to just survive stuff, right? So Orisa, at least the last couple of months, has been very much a leadership role. But in ranked, I think it's played a lot more passively, like consistently more passively. And then the vice versa is true for Winston. Winston in ranked is often played in more divey. You're going to take flanks. You're going to pressure their Mercy. You're going to go look hunting for their Ana, for their Zen. Going to pressure their Ashe. But a lot of the times in Winston metas in Overwatch, and we've seen this with the Brig Zen meta of times past, with the recent Reaper Summer meta, Winston's played very passive. Very, very passive, more about controlling space, playing corners, making sure that your bubble timing is really good. Way more passive and way more, almost like a Reinhardt in a way that they played. Because in terms of the hard dive comps, Winston wasn't generally, like, hard dive really hasn't been meta for a while. And if it has, it's generally been played more with Wrecking Ball. So Winston's been more about the space holder. He's better against the Reaper. He's better against the Sombra. And so more patient, and honestly, not much of a dive hero. Just more patient and slow. So I think Winston and Orisa, in terms of like the proactive aggression, the leadership from Orisa, the patience, the slowness, the playing the corners with Winston are very opposite of how they are played in ranked, I would say. It's like haha bastard, but you're only OP if you have a good angle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it makes sense. Like, I was actually really impressed by you guys picking up Ryan Winston. I don't think anybody actually understood. I mean, obviously the teams I'm sure understood, but like how good that was. And I was impressed yesterday too, because what it meant is because you guys were the first to pick Ryan Winston and got good at it, everybody was scared to mirror you in the short term because, oh, they've already practiced it, we're not going to be as good. And what that meant is that the initiative, the impetus was put on us to counter you. And so when we're trying to counter you, you guys don't even have to roll out Winston. You just roll out Ryan Sigma and look at us as we roll out with these funny Ryan Winston counter comps, and you guys just play Sigma and laugh. That was really smart. I had a lot of I was very impressed by you guys rolling out in Sigma on Night Market. I really wanted the Bastion stuff to work, but that was a great boot by Raptor. Yeah, of course. I'm sure when I compliment the big brain, has nothing to do with you. Tanks and rank just struggle to get into position without taking too much damage. Yeah, exactly. Winston's a very punishing hero to play. Yeah. Okay, DPS heroes that are played differently and ranked. Actually, I'm gonna put on. I need more non-copyright music. Help! Can I just do the next Winston Symphony? I'm just gonna do the next Mozart Symphony. Yeah, screw it. We're just gonna roll with it. All right. Ashe's played pretty much the same. Doomfist is played similarly. Symmetra. And this is tough. I would say either Tracer or Genji, but I'm not sure. Genji. I'm gonna put Genji. And I've got very specific reasons why. I'm not necessarily saying these are the two most, but in the short term of thinking, I can definitely think of big two reasons why these guys are played totally different. Okay. So, Genji is really unusual in the Bat Brig meta, and this has been very recently. He was played a little bit, and then a while back when Genji was overtuned. He was very much an off-angle control, make sure that the Ashe doesn't build ult charge or doesn't get too greedy of an angle, and then the big one was, when you're actually blading, you are going in with Halt, Orisa Shield, you're getting double packed, like you were getting everything pocketed. It's not Nano Blade, just normal straight up blade. And the entire team played around your Genji blading. And you could say that about team play and ranked or scrims in general, but like Genji, a lot of times is just very funny. Maybe gets Mercy Beam, you know, Nano Boost, whatever, and there's like a lack, but like Blade in scrims is very much like a team-wide execution. It's like a pull window. Like, it's not just something that the BAP does, it's something the whole team does. And with Blade, it's not just everybody put your support into Genji. You're actually going in and fighting with the Genji. You were on top of the Genji. That, along with how he plays a very much, oftentimes, especially in specific maps, he plays a very heavy tank pressurer, because he has the ability to utilize his wall climb to get to really awkward angles to where he can shoot into your Sigma, into your Orisa right from the back. So sometimes he's not even chasing the Ashe in the off angle or flanking like hard. Sometimes he's just like, you know, sometimes like the tank line's like, you know, here pushing into, you know, your tank line, and the Genji's just like right here. And he's just spamming the tank, jumping over, spam, and he's just there to put pressure, and then we go from there. He's not going all the way around here or dueling the Widow or standing behind shield. He's in that aggressively brawly angle. Like, Genji actually isn't a terrible brawl hero if he's played with really, really well. And when I mean brawl, I mean the Orisa Sigma stuff. He's not good with Rein. Hey, Poison, or Poison. Yeah, those are the days, man. Those are the days. That was quite the ordeal. And then in terms of Symmetra, so Symmetra, you're either playing her heavily for the TP. So you're like talking about like Hanamura first to break the choke, you're gonna TP, or like the Lijiang Night Market, the entire team TPs to point and you find a point. But the other thing about Symmetra as well is that sometimes she's not played for the TP at all, or very much. For example, Control Center first fight, she's played to TP for space, but then your entire team just presses W, and the whole goal is to get, hey, Gecko.
You know what they say, big hair, big brain.
Who's they? Thanks, mate. I appreciate it for 3 months. Thanks, Gecko. The whole goal is to keep melee range on the enemy Reinhardt so that your Symmetra can charge beam. Like, Symmetra Junkrat has been a meta composition on Control Center for a long time, just for the raw amount of damage. And it's like, the whole goal is keep our Symmetra's to carry, keep our Symmetra's carry, help her win the space early. And so the entire composition plays around that. So the two heroes I'm pulling up here are the two heroes that are more egregious or more obviously team-centric heroes in scrims. And you could say that about a lot of heroes, but like, you know, obviously Mei, and, you know, obviously you have your Bastion, who's very team-centric as well, but like these two specifically, because in ranked, it can be a little bit more hit or miss. How am I doing? I'm doing pretty well. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Lastly, for support, heroes that are played very differently. Moira is a big one. Moira is played very differently in scrims. Can anybody guess what about Moira is played completely differently in scrims? And then maybe Lucio? Mercy's played very similar in scrims as she is in ranked, like very much pocketed DPS kind of a thing. Moira and Lucio, I'd say, are very, like the big thing with Lucio is just, you know, you're almost always team centric. You're very, very rarely going on Reddit Lucio. Like, Reddit Lucio is not really a playstyle in scrims, like, at all, except for when you're playing with the avoided comp, which is like the Echo Mercy Lucio stuff, where your Lucio doesn't have anybody to really help, so he just kind of goes in his own missions. Sometimes he'll work with the Diva. But Lucio is always team-centered, always protect, support. You know, you have your aggressive Lucios that go in for boops to boop T people in, but even that is based around timing windows of when your team can actually push it. You don't just go in for a boop. You go in for a boop because your team is pushing. So it's a there's no Reddit Lucioing in scrims. At least there's very, very rarely. What about Moira is different in scrims? Very, very big deal. Yeah, brawling front lane with Brig, obviously. Yeah. Yeah, Robin has it. Yeah, it's Robin. Yeah, it's Robin. Robin got it. Very rarely with Moira, at least in metas that Moira is good at, do you damage orb. Anywhere near a fight happening. Anywhere near a fight happening. Between fights, absolutely. But if a fight is about to happen, you do not damage orb. Because the thing is like, people are so much better at like, you know, a lot of times Moiras are played in Diva metas, where the Moira orb gets eaten instantly. Where Divas gets eaten instantly, and a lot of the times you need the extra sustain in Moira metas because, especially with the resource nerf, she needs the healing orb. Like the last time Moira was played in meta was the Reaper, Sombra, Winston, Diva, Lucio, Moira meta, which we did relatively well at. It was like brawl dive, and we learned very quickly that Moira orb was an extremely difficult resource to use. The first time I saw Moira orbs damage orbs being spammed basically off of cooldown in this meta, I knew that it was wrong. It was one of the first things that I worked on with Lucer, was about how we actually utilized heal orb in that initial tank cooldown trait, Rose Underwater, Think It Will Fall, where the Winston and Diva would be smashing into each other and a Reaper would be smashing into each other, because that extra 300 healing would go almost instantly. Like, overheal, because the spray wasn't good enough. You needed the extra orb during those traits because of the amount of damage that would come in. And because of when those trades were often happening and where the orb was being placed, Quasi-Amando, Thanks for the Fall, where the orbs were being placed, it often meant that the orb was the heal orb wouldn't get instantly eaten. So the damage orb would just get eaten if you just spammed it. It was very easy to see. It was in poke phases when Diva didn't mind eating it. But mid-fight, heal orb, you could often sneak it in there and get most of the heal orb, maybe if not all of it, without it getting eaten. And that was a big, big reason why heal orb was used there. So heal orb was a lot more common, and it generally is a lot more common in scrims where you know this is when we're engaging, I'm going to save the extra resource. Whereas with ranked, it's more like, are my tank, like, when are we going? There's a lack of leadership. And so the best thing you can do is just spam damage or rough cooldown to build that ultimate faster, right? And that's something that I went into with my Moira orb video a little bit, but definitely proved itself here. And here's a fun little tidbit. You guys want the leaks. Moira orb usage evolved. So the first, like, we were ahead of the curve. Lucer was a good Moira. He worked hard at it, and I'm a good Moira coach. And we learned, like, the whole damage orb versus heal orb usage, and we adjusted that. So we would laugh when we saw Moiras and contenders spamming damage orbs mid-fight. But we got above that.
Hey, you're sad to see
Thanks,
you
Rabbit.
quit contenders. I wish you success in your future projects and hope that there will be some occasional
I hope so too.
streams.
Thank you, mate. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. But we evolved beyond that because the meta of the Reaper Sombra evolved to which Sombra maintained an off angle for longer. Because it was relatively easy to bully Sombras off of off angles because there wasn't any ranged healing. I mean, you had your spray, but oftentimes your Sombra would be on an angle to where you couldn't support her. So what we actually learned about is that we would constantly try to get backbone on the off angle and get their Sombra to go away. And so what we'd actually unironically do is we started damage orbing Sombras on off angles instead of the enemy core to get there, because it would be like 100, like 80, 90, 100 damage on the Sombra over the course of like 2 or 3 seconds along, you know, with right click, and we'd instantly turn Sombra, damage orb her, right click, she would get out, our Sombra gets off angle, then we'd heal her, and it ended up that we didn't need heal orb as much because our tanks were taking a lot less damage because the Sombra wasn't on the off angle, so they could play corners better, and that meant that our Sombra got the off angle better. So it evolved down to where our orb usage evolved even further, and that kind of stuff just it just doesn't happen in scrim or ranked. Catatrix, thank you for the sub. I really appreciate it. But yeah, Moira's like one of those heroes that's extremely entertaining in scrims for like the first couple of days. Then it gets really boring. But there's some depth with her, which made it fun. Okay, I hope that answers your question. That was a good question. All right, next question. What would you have done differently if it were back at the beginning of my Overwatch coaching career? I think definitely prioritizing leadership and like synergy. I put a lot of emphasis on understanding the game more, which is understandable because I was very newbie. But like, and in terms of actual execution with my coaching, focus more on leadership and like communication with my team. Definitely, like that is something that I really felt like I did well with Sheer Cold. That and basic macro, and I think it showed. And I would have liked to have done that again. He made fun of your Moira tracking. Yeah. If you're able to get an assistant coach or analyst position, would you have stayed in the scene? If not, what kind of position accessory? Yeah, I probably would have. I mean, I when I reached out to all my Overwatch League team, like to all the Overwatch League, not my Overwatch League team, folks, I would say, hey, you know, I was interested in somebody doing one-on-one coaching, strategic coaching. Like I feel confident enough in my one-on-one coaching and understanding of the game to have accepted that position. And you know, it would have been you know, financial security for me for the next year for sure. So I would have been down. It would have been something I would have had to think and pray about, but it would have definitely been something I would have been down for. Okay. How do you get tanks to step up and be vocal about where they are going, what route to take, what corner to defend, especially with players who are sort of shy? I mean, I think the first thing is always patience, right? Set short-term goals. I mean, I worked with Shade, who was consistently a vocal tank, but certainly not a strong leader. And over the course of the season, we worked at it up until like I said, this last couple of weeks where he was an absolute monster. Like he was maybe the biggest reason why we did so well with his leadership. And so that took time and patience. And that was somebody who was already relatively vocal to begin with. So it's a big challenge. The first thing I would do is whenever you're trying to coach somebody something, the most important thing you can do is to communicate the significance and the importance of what you're coaching. It's not, if I'm going to sit here, guys, and tell you how to do a backflip, half of you guys are going to zone out because half of you guys don't care, right? So I have to get you to care about what I'm coaching you first so that you're actually paying attention and so that you actually put in the time and the work and the effort to actually improve at it. So for me, if you want somebody to be more vocal, they need to know why this is important. Why is where they're going important? Why is what route to take important? Why is what corner to defend? And you could talk about like team synergy and how, hey, we lost this fight here because we set up forward, but you wanted to play cart and we didn't know that. Or, you wanted to hold this corner, we didn't know that. You didn't communicate that loud enough, and you can see how they walled you and you rushed and they rushed you and you died here. And so this fight was lost because of that. And you could do that. And once they understand, it makes it so much easier to work with them. So much easier to work with them. And again, like I said, that's a work in progress. Like you can't just instantly go, oh, absolutely, thank you so much, coach. All right, team, that's not going to happen. But you could start and be consistent with it. Zevia, ladies and gentlemen, stevia soda, no artificial sweeteners. Okay. Bold says, are you still searching for a job in Overwatch? When he said it was unlikely you'll find another job in a good time frame, but you can still try until the next Overwatch season hits while having another job, or maybe can reschedule those crucial 2 days you missed with the org. I know you know your situation better. Also, as a player, it's scary to see this stuff. Is everyone trying to get an out, including you and me? However, just ends up closing the bank, including a small handful. All right, so I mean, I'm not really searching for a job in the Overwatch League. If I was reached out, if somebody reached out to me, I would consider it. But I'm going to devote my focuses onto something like more rewarding for the time that I put into it, because Overwatch League was very rewarding in what I learned, but very unrewarding in what I was paid, and like the career progress that I made. I mean, I went from scrub gold to trialing with an Overwatch League, but I'm still working with Sheer Cold, which is an unpaid team, So, I mean, that's not exactly career progress anywhere else. Hey, we're not going to pay you anything, and then you're going to, after almost 3 years, you're still not going to be paid anything, So, I mean, I've gotten tremendously better, and I've learned not just about Overwatch, but, like, that's the thing is I'm so proud of, like, everything I've learned about coaching and leadership and communication and everything else about life, but, son of a gun, I gotta eat, So I'm not really searching for a job, so I'm putting my focus on other things, but I would be open to discussion if an Overwatch League team were to decide to, change their mind. Is it worth trying to get to L? Only if you are really driven and love Overwatch. Overwatch lost some of its savor with me over the years because of the poor experiences I've had with some things. So it made my motivation less great because I got a little burned out, and also my situations weren't great. So if I had maybe better luck with my situations, I would be still pursuing it. Maybe if I enjoyed the game and not been as burned out, I would still pursue it. But ultimately, it was not something I loved as much, and also had kind of burned me, so I wasn't as into it.
Just read your post. Hey. Keep your head up. You are an amazing coach and person.
That's super kind of you, mate. Thank you so much for the bits. I really appreciate that. I tell you something. I had to sit my wife down this morning and have her read all the messages on Twitter and Discord. Like, you guys have no idea how much that meant to me. And not just from, like, I got a message. I don't know if you guys saw the thing from Neptuno, how he was like, oh, this guy should have been an Overwatch League coach. Like, obviously, I was like, hey, Neptuno, like, that's awesome. Like, an Overwatch League player, and I got a couple other messages from a couple other coaches and players as well. Some Overwatch League guys. I was flattered. But, like, that means a lot, but I don't care if you're like just some guy who's tuned into my stream a couple times. Like, I got so many nice messages from people that I've seen in stream and I've talked to about stuff and I've coached, and those mean just as much, man. Like, I was so thankful for all the messages you guys sent, and I really appreciate, you know, the bits, but I really appreciate the message. That meant a lot to me. I had no idea. Like, it just makes it all worth it, man. Like, it really does. But yeah, OWL is definitely a little scary. I mean, especially with COVID and all this stuff. But if it's something that you love and you want to work toward, I don't regret the last 2.5 years. Let's put it that way. I don't want to continue further, but I don't regret it. I'm sorry in advance. Oh, bless your soul. What have you done to my Discord? I'm gonna try and speed run some of these, but it depends on how much time I have. All right. How do you develop individual players outside of individual VOD reviews? I mean, whatever feedback you give them during scrims obviously helps. You know, when you do team VOD reviews, a lot of the times that there is feedback that's more centered to some players and more centered to others, depending on the meta, depending on the strategy. Like, if we're playing in a Orisa meta, like, Lucer was very confident in his BAP this last meta. It was mostly just his communication that he kind of sucked at. But his individual like cooldown usage and stuff like that was already fine. So whenever it was, I didn't even do a VOD review the last week or two. It was just me hollering him to start piping up. But then there are other players like Graythan, where positioning was like really important in playing the proper angles, and I reviewed with Graythan for like 5 hours individually over like the last week and a half. So it's based off of need, the individual VOD reviews, and then also you need to talk with the players too. I think some of the most beneficial and valuable time I spent as a coach were just talking with players one-on-one. Those meetings that I referred to earlier, one-on-one. How are you doing? Was there anything you're frustrated about? Like, are you feeling motivated right now? Like, your communication has done a really good job. Yeah, EasyBot's in chat. He was really good at that. EasyBot was really good at not just the coaching the game, but actually like coaching the player, like talking with them. And I owe a lot of our success this season to what EasyBot did to Sheer Cold. How frequently do you have those meetings? Based off of need. And a lot of that is just being aware enough. Can you turn on the heat? Yeah. Being aware of like what was like in tune. Like being in tune with the players. If you felt something was like there's tension or some players not playing as well, go talk with them. Figure it out. And at the very least, if you feel like I don't trust my senses to know when there's something wrong and when you need to talk to them, then just every couple of weeks, shoot them a message. Hey, how you doing, man? You doing all right? Like, you work, like, everything okay? Like, you know? Daily for some. Yeah. But that's the most important segment.
Love the outfit. I'm gonna go meet Chris.
Huh?
I have to go meet Chris at the building.
Okay, sir. I love you. Hey, can I? I'm actually good. I'm good.
What's up?
No, I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Love you. Be safe.
I don't know.
Did you ever do special exercises to learn shot calling rotations with previous teams? How did you do? Yeah, we did some rotational drills. Scattered over the couple of years, I've done several rotational drills, like stacking. Everybody stacks to like push through a choke. With Uprising Academy, we did a couple rotates and fake rotates on specific maps. There were definitely, when it came to like, for example, like shot calling, there were scrim blocks where we would just hard focus on communication. Like, hey guys, we're doing nothing but this. But outside, like actual drills, Overwatch is a very drill unfriendly game. So there's not a lot you could do, but yeah, I did incorporate a little bit of that. You know, checking confidence in leadership. How'd you go about nurturing that confidence, and how would you do it with someone who's in GM? Talk with the player. Talk with, like, again, like I was explaining to, where is it? Froggers, just explain to them how important it is, showcase different points in review where a lack of leadership hurt the team's ability to perform. Don't make it theoretical. Just show, hey, we lost this team fight because you didn't step up, you know? And then ultimately, like encourage that during scrimmages, put priority on that, even if it's a little bit over gameplay, even if their gameplay suffers. Like a lot of players, it was helpful for us that we played in an Orisa meta, because Shade was very confident on that hero, so that allowed him to focus more on his leadership and think less about his actual gameplay. But that's something that you can kind of utilize. Like if there's a hero that the player's relatively good at, then that's a time to work on leadership. You know, if there's a meta where leadership for a specific player is really important, that's a time to work on the leadership. You know, talk with the player, explain to them, hey, listen, we need your leadership in these kind of situations. And then obviously positive reinforcement is good too. Like there's a lot of times where we had a tough, week of scrims, or we lost a tough or won a tough official. And if I felt anybody during that scrim or official step up and say something positive or provide a good moment of leadership, I really prioritize taking the time to go message that player and be like, hey, thank you for doing that. That was awesome. Like, I don't think you understand like how much of an impact that had in your teammates and all that kind of stuff. Like they need to know when they're doing it well or when they're improving. You need to get in their ear and be like, listen, when you stepped up and said, hey guys, I know we're losing, but we're going to go ahead and turn around and, all right guys, hey, focus up. Or like, all right, I want to go, like let them know when they're doing it good. You know, when they're done good, let them know. You know, don't let those moments slip away. I'm hot, man. I'm gonna have to get my sweatshirt. Okay, thanks, Baggins. How would you go about building mental strength and confidence, not only in gym, but totally type of the big mental strength. So I spent a lot of time working and learning about mental strength and confidence. And I think the biggest thing that I learned was about how you separate performance from winning and losing, and more about just being in the moment and doing the best you can, and don't worry about the results. Focus, don't think about the future, don't think about the past. If you do, it's okay. Just focus on what do I have to do right now? What do I have to do right now? Don't overthink things, just feel, see, and react. And we would train that. Like we would do things called mock officials. Mock as in fake. Fake officials where we pretend a scrim block was an official and we focus on winning the official. We did breathing exercises and focus exercises. There's a lot of things that we could do. There is a YouTuber and professional performance coach who I highly recommend. He's somebody I've been following for some time and who I actually worked with. And he is really good at this kind of stuff. I will direct you to his YouTube channel where you can find a lot more information on that topic. Competitive advantage, how to not choke, how to perform your best, all that kind of juicy stuff. Way more information than I can share in one stream. Highly recommend it. Whoops. How would you go? Are there any books you like to give a shout out, read out for aspiring coaches? Ha 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 ha. Big one for me was Peak, the Science of Expertise. So I'll type it out for you. Peak, the Science of Expertise. Extreme Ownership, and the sequel, Dichotomy of Leadership. And I strongly recommend John Wooden, and to a lesser extent, Bill Walsh, for any books that you can find on them, or their coaching philosophy, their how they approach the game. I think was ahead of their time. A lot of I don't recommend, like, for information and for learning. I spent a lot of time studying old school coaches, and I think old school coaches had a lot of good things, but they also had a lot of bad things. But I really have a lot of respect for John Wooden and Bill Walsh's philosophy. Yes, John Wooden knows his crap. Hey, Bullet, thanks for the subs, I said. Thanks for the 300 subs! Holy cow! No, thanks for the bits, man. I appreciate it. How did you have your team deal with call-out locations? Basic call-out locations is important. Like, everybody needs to know where, hotel is on Kings Row, or bus, or, boiler, mega, things like that. You need to know basic call-outs. That is something that the team should work at. Left and right is not good. You want to avoid those words. John Wilkes Booth? No, not John Wilkes Booth. Oh dear, my sound is gone. Well, I guess we do the next. Okay. Okay, How would you go about building a... Oh my god, Baggets! How'd you go about building a sustainable structure for a team as a whole that transcends the current players and helps new players transition into the team? First off, I would take the time to actually, like, Coach Sexy. Here's another one you guys can look into. He's got pretty good stuff too. He doesn't do stuff anymore. He was on my stream a long time ago. He had a whole little video about how, like, building your pillars of like your coaching philosophy and how important that was. But to me, I think, like, the simplest way of putting it is find out what priorities you have as a coach. Is it good macro? Is everybody on the same page? Is it a good mental? And more important than that, don't just think about what's important to you. Think about what your team actually needs. Like, one of the best things that I did for Sierra Cold is we would have, every now and then, we'd have coaches meetings where we'd sit down and we'd go, okay, what do we feel like are the big areas for team? Is it an attitude issue or a performance issue? Is it a macro understanding? Is it the one-on-ones? And we would prioritize that. So when you're talking about building a sustainable structure, you need to have a priority list of stuff that has to be executed and perfected first. So when you bring in new players, it's not like, oh, what do you want to work on? It's like, hey, listen, buddy, you're coming in. We prioritize shot calling and leadership a lot, and you have to fit into the structure. Or we do a lot of, he did a lot of, like, we need this or we need that, and we would adjust to the needs. And a lot of that is being a good listener to what the team needs, but also it's about being a good communicator, because ultimately, if you're bringing in, like you're saying, a new player or even an entirely new roster, is knowing this is the most important thing. And for me personally, it was always everybody's on the same page. We have a good basic macro, so there's never any confusion about, like, what the composition is supposed to do. It's always very basic, good basic macro, and that we always had a plan. Like, between fight communication, plan, that kind of stuff, I got mad if we didn't have a plan. Like, that really ticked me off. And so that was a priority for me. And so when you're bringing in new players, you already know what you have to work on first. Like when I did the whole team reviews with the different tier 2 teams, right? That was kind of similar to the situation you're explaining now, where it was with completely different teams on a day-to-day basis. And every single time I'd go in there and I would, kind of pay attention to what the team was struggling with a little bit. But ultimately, if they didn't know what the plan was, if they weren't all on the same page, and they didn't have a decent understanding of the macro, that's where I started. And I didn't care about the individual this and, and this or no, it's like, if they didn't nail these 3 pillars, I knew what the problem was. And that's what I prioritized. And you kind of have to kind of pick and choose, like, what you think is the most important thing for your team, and most important thing for you as a coach. Like, what do you really believe is the key to a good team? What were the pillars of coaching, and how did you enact and sustain those pillars? I'm pretty sure I just explained, like, everybody being on the same page, basic macro, and then always having a plan. And then obviously, like, the confidence, right? Like, but that was kind of like a side one. How I sustained those pillars, confidence was just, hammering home that we just need to work, we work, and we build confidence from that. And that when we get into officials, you don't stress, you don't worry, you just do the best you can, and you don't worry about the result. You just see what happens. For the macro, I always would, like my goal is, like, just, like, figure out what are the 2 or 3, like, basic things. Like with Ball Tracer with us, Ball Tracer brings in, it was backline positioning and sightlines, whether we're marking or diving, like fighting for map control, not rushing dives, and then, like, making a plan. With the recent Bat Brig meta, it was very much, what is our ult play plan? What angles are our DPS taking? And then leadership with rotations, right? Those are really the 3 most important things. And so you would establish a basic macro for Reaper Sombra. It was our Sombra angle. It was our tank cooldowns at the same time. And then it was also the planning. You notice that planning is always like a fundamental macro thing. And then the details we would talk about, but nothing was ever emphasized more than, is our Sombra on an angle? Are our tanks using cooldowns at proper times? That is just more important than anything else. Because if you get that, you're going to win 80% of fights. The details just don't matter that much. Would you limit it to 3 basic things, or were there times where more than 3? I mean, sometimes more than 3, but very rarely. You have to understand that even pro players are just as stupid as I am. Like, they can only really focus on a couple of things at a time. So if you get the basics down and you want to talk about individuals, like, I would individually review with Winston's to talk about how you to properly use your tank cooldowns. But ultimately, like, we'd keep it basic. Backbone is not that stupid. Well, that's because Backbone's not a tank player. My throat is so dry. How'd you go about planning your job as a head coach for the months of work ahead? I just didn't. I didn't know. I didn't plan. Like, I planned on always doing is like making sure that players always did one-on-ones as necessary. Like, we made it a goal to have a player do a one-on-one at least once a week. You know, sometimes we failed on that, but sometimes we did better than that. Sometimes we do 2 or 3 in a week, between me and EasyBot. We always made sure that we had a decent macro. Like I said, like the pillars are what I always did, like almost without exception. The one-on-ones, you know, making sure that we had a basic macro and that we always had a plan, and that was my planning for the months ahead. The details I didn't sweat. Like, we would meet as coaches and we'd adjust and we'd figure out like what we needed to work on, like any player issues but like that wasn't as important as the pillars. The pillars were the planning, and then all the details and then knowing when things need to be done, I would know it when I see it. Yeah. So I don't think planning ahead as a coach is necessarily something crucial. Like, you just need to know what needs to get done so that we're continuing to do better in 2 or 3 months, and the details take care of themselves. Like, you will go, oh, hey, we need to really work on this, so I'm going to add this to our list. And like, that kind of stuff's going to happen. Like, don't say, in 2 months, we're going to stop focusing on shot calling and we're going to focus on, you know, teamwork. Now, you don't know where you're going to be in 2 months. You might have to keep working on shot calling. You might be done and ready to move on in a week. You don't know. Coach the team. Like, don't chart them. What, will you finally make a fitness video series to show the world how you got them gains? I mean, here's my thing with fitness videos. I have spent a lot of time studying fitness and health and a lot of different things. So like, what I do for workouts is the accumulation of like essentially almost a decade of work. So, and honestly off and on, but it's just kind of like been a lifestyle. So like, if you want to know how I got them games, I wanted to, like, long story short, I wanted to play tackle football. I told my friends I want to play tackle football. They laughed at me because I was too skinny. And then I worked out and I played high school tackle football. And my first season, I was the most valuable player. So screw you, friends. But no, I wanted to do it. And so I took the interest in doing it and getting good at it. And it's just kind of become a habit. I don't love working out. I love working out and what it makes me be able to do. And like anything else, it's much better to build a lifestyle of health than it is to like work out 3 hours a day. I know people like that. No, thank you. There have been times where I've worked out 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day for several weeks because I just didn't have time or motivation. And sometimes I would do more. Like, you just build a consistency. It's like with everything. What kind of rituals did you manifest during time as a head coach? Rituals in terms of stuff that doesn't really affect my coaching, but is like, I would get morose, sick, and grumpy the day of an official. I'd sit with a hoodie. I'd get cold. I wouldn't eat anything all day. To the point to where even if I wasn't thinking about the official, I would still feel not hungry. I usually didn't sleep very well the night before. Another ritual was I would often... I have this habit of desk banging. I know it's something that I do a lot, and I don't mean to do it like out of anger or out of humor. I just do it. Like, I don't know if it started with when I was streaming, when I was doing it for funny, but I do bang my desk a lot when I'm giving feedback or coaching. Like, not a lot, but I don't, it just kind of happens. Like, it just seems like there's a way of like emphasizing my point. You know, this kind of happens. I am relatively a vocal coach, pretty tough, but I don't yell as much as people think I do during scrims and stuff. Arcade games, yeah. If the official wasn't on stream, I would get into like the arcade game and just play Mr. Heroes with the sound off and stress and sweat. Yeah. I don't slam my torb hammer. I don't use my torb hammer that much. It sits here tucked in just in case of emergencies, though. Any other rituals? It's kind of a funny question. I used to warm up with my players before scrims. I'd go into, you know, the tryhard FFA with my players, and I'd beat up an IM37 and and Tap and, you know, and Dons and all those guys back in the day. I had fun, and I would always, you know, if I got a kill on them, which you know happened more frequently than not because I wasn't a terrible Zen player, I just endlessly humiliate them. There's a couple of clips I'm sure you guys have seen of that. But yeah. I did stop because I was scared that Backbone would kill me a lot. I realized I stopped doing that. I don't really know why I stopped. I think it's because I was focused more on like I don't know. I stopped playing. I stopped playing before. I don't even do arcade all that much anymore. Anyway. We're going about learning the game from the non-player perspective. Where do you start? I don't know. I mean, I started with IOStux and Jane videos, but I don't know what it is like nowadays. What, start with me? I don't know. Start with SVB? Start with, you know, Natter? I don't know. Like, I don't know what the modern coach, new coach starts with. But start about learning how to communicate and start about, like, setting those pillars, I think, like I was talking about earlier. I think that would be the thing I'd want to start with. You do puzzles as your ritual? He does these, like, these little two-piece, like, wait. I can't find it. There's a really funny Garfield strip where, back when Garfield was funny, it was like, boy, John is really stressing his brain today. Those two-piece puzzles, those puzzles could be a poser. You know, he's holding two pieces of puzzle, trying to figure, you know, that's easy, but anyway. Are there any things that you've learned recently within the last year that you would be beneficial for other coaches to know and understand? I mean, I've harped on it a lot already, but it's worth repeating that confidence in players is really important. Confidence of like, hey, listen, we're going to work hard. We're going to do all right. Don't worry about the details. And then leadership, like not necessarily shot calling, but leadership, like always have a plan. Some players need to step up. Like a coach stepping up is great, but like you're playing a game where in an official, you don't talk. You know, I mean, leadership in players is important in any sport, but I think it's especially so in Overwatch because we get into a map and I'm done. I don't talk. There's nothing I can do. No adjustments I can coach, no sideline coaching, no plays I'm going to call in, nothing. It's all the players. So players have to be smart. Players have to be motivated. They have to be leaders. So I think the big thing that we were missing with Uprising Academy is we just had not very good player leadership. Like I was very similar in like you know, leader, motivator, but I wasn't there, you know? And so I really dropped the ball with building that. So player leadership is so important. Like players that want to be there, that keep their other teammates up. Rhino. Speaking of the devil, I'm going to give Rhino a little shout out. Odyssey is a good team, but Odyssey would not be half the team they are without Rhino. And I really mean that. Like, guys have no idea the level of value that Rhino gives to his team with his leadership and his communication and his shot calling. And I mean that. They would lose a lot of games without Rhino. And he's 14 years old. He's like the size of my Adam's apple. Okay? And he performs at a high level. So like you have to understand like that kind of stuff is beyond valuable at the pro level. So if you don't have player leadership, if you got a bunch of quiet players, nobody really talks up or takes leadership or like with communication or motivates players or encourages them or shot calls, then you need to work on that. This is Adam's apple. This little thing. How do you know when to swap off Lucio and which support to swap to? I mean, you swap off Lucio if you don't need speed boost. If you're playing a full spam war, if you're playing a dive meta where your backline doesn't really need to move around all that much, and which is generally most of the case because Lucio just isn't that good, you could swap to. Ana Brig, I mean, Moira Lucio, Ana Lucio, those are really only good brawl setups. So if you're playing most dive comps and most spam comps, you're going to want to play Ana Brig, something like that, Ana Mercy, or, you know, maybe even Ana Zen, although that one's kind of rough. No, he's 14. How'd you go about bringing the mindset of I have all the medals, but I don't rank up, I can't get now, so I can't play another role? I mean, this is more ranked, but like, if you can't win games, then it's not like Papa Jeff has something out for you. You just suck. You're performing worse than you think you are, and or you're inconsistent. So I mean, it's just stats like that before I even took the time to learn about personal responsibility and the mental, like I just said, you know, it's not statistically possible for me to play 100 games and be at the same rank if I'm not actually better than the enemy support. It's just not possible. So, okay. I mean, just say it's not statistically possible for that. And even if it were, if you want to be a better player, you're playing ranked so that you could be a better scrim partner. Screw your rank. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, who cares? You can't win a rank. Nobody gives a rip. But what are you actually working on in ranked? You know, like my boys played a lot of ranked, because most of them did. Like, that's how you practice. Like, it shows if you get into scrims and you haven't practiced your mechanics in rank. So, you know, make sure that, like, if they don't, why are you worrying about ranking up? You're a part of a scrim team. Focus on that first. Focus on being a better player in scrims first. Oh, major midget. My least favorite midget. I look in the mirror and that's what I see. The rank number important. I mean, you look at, well, see, Luke's rank is significant because his mechanics are so good that he's reached that rank. Like that does imply that he's got a lot to bring to a team. So, of course, rank matters, but it's not something that you should be prioritizing over everything else. Especially if the player's grouching over that. Man, I'm hot. I don't know why. I was like cold and now I'm hot. I think I just get excited and start talking. I really need water too. Can you guys give me like 2 seconds? I'm gonna get some water. All right, so hair check. I'm a little behind. You guys ready for the Matrix? Here we go. Good enough. And by good enough, I mean bad enough. We know you're hot. Ah, thanks, Major Midget. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. How would you go about breaking the mindset if I have all the metal? Oh, we already did that one. How do you go about creating, discovering new compositions to play? It always starts with the patch notes with a hero that is now all of a sudden buffed or nerfed, and thinking about like how that affects the meta. Hey, Brig is mega buffed. I wonder what that means for, you know, this, and then you kind of build around that. I talked about this yesterday about how like metas are generally formed by 1 or 2 heroes, and then you pick heroes that fit those heroes. How do you go about training new comps? Figure out like what do you think of them, what feels like the most important things in the composition, and then you prioritize those, and then obviously those adjust over time. Like there's a lot of times where you think like this is the really important thing, but wait, no, that's the most important thing, or actually that's not how, that doesn't feel good to play like that at all. And then obviously pay attention to what your enemies are doing and adjust. Was there any kind of general training you did with your teams? I don't know what this means. We did consistent consistent VOD reviews. Yeah, I mean, consistent VOD reviews. Like I said, we did some rotational drills sometimes. We definitely talked about our communication a lot. Yeah, I'm not sure. What is the most important thing for a player to coach a relationship? Mutual respect. Like me knowing that they are putting in effort and that they know I'm putting in effort. Like effort and being a genuine, like considerate person as a coach covers a multitude of sins. Like if the player understands that I am working and doing my best, and that I'm a genuinely considerate person that's not selfish and not interested in what I do, that covers a multitude of sins. Was there ever a time you had to just let the team learn a lesson the hard way? I mean, sometimes. I think that happens a lot with like little compositional stuff. Like a player will have an idea and that they want to try it, and I know it'll be easier for them to try it and for it to fail than it would be for me to sit there and convince them otherwise. And ultimately, after that happens enough, you know, they go, hey, this guy knows his stuff, you know, or her stuff, and you know, they'll go, hey, you know, maybe we shouldn't. But I never discourage players from trying things, you know. I make sure that they understand the Overwatch macro concepts that might make that strategy silly in theory, but I'm not gonna like, you know, like, let's put it this way. Like if you were to parent a child, you wouldn't spend your whole life saying, don't touch this, don't touch that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Like there's a lot of people that parent like that. It's better to parent about, don't do this, here's why. Right? Don't do that. Here's why. You know, this could hurt you, and then you teach, you train the kid. You don't just tell the kid no, because there's going to become a time when, you know, you're going to just have to say no, and they might not understand why. And you might not be able to explain, or might not even have time to explain why. They just need to listen. But they have to trust you for that to work. And if they don't trust you, it's not going to work. And you have to build that trust, not just by saying no, 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 do what I say, but by actually like leading, right? And obviously there are a lot of things like, especially really, really younger kids, they just need to listen because they won't understand anyway. But you're not working with babies, really. You're working with adults, and they who can think, and they deserve explanations and leadership. Yeah, the why is important, yeah. How do you nurture leadership with a team, or as the military would call it, junior subordinate leadership? Same thing as I talked about earlier, where you encourage player leadership. Every single time you see it, every single time a player speaks up during a scrim, when everybody's dead, and it's like, hey guys, let's go, let's push, let's motivate it, and the players step up, that player needs to hear about it, about how good of it, like how big of an impact that was. Anytime where a player like in an official really steps up with their planning or shot calling, they need to hear about it. They need to know how important it was, what they did, and how much of it. So you can coach and you can explain it, and you can explain why, and that's good. But you also need to make sure that when that leadership, when those moments happen, that the players are praised for that. So that they get that positive reinforcement of like, okay, something good happened. I'm gonna keep doing that, right? So nurture leadership by explaining the importance of it, setting goals for it, figuring out who's going to step up and who's best at it, and then when it does happen, reward it. And you don't have to reward it with sitting cash money, but I'm not dancing. Please, dude. Listen, all of you guys attempted dance moves I will do next week. But they need to know when they're doing something well. Like, I need to know when I'm doing something well. That's part of the reason why I was so bummed with the whole Uprising Academy thing, because I tried so many different things and it made so many different adjustments, but nothing ever worked. So it was really difficult and unmotivating for me, because even though I felt like I was getting better as a coach, it didn't show, at least for the first several months. And that's extremely unmotivating. It's not just like, you know, kitty does something good, you give the kitty a cookie. I mean, adults need it. I need it, you know? You have to? No. Yeah, I know. I know. Don't. Please, no. Please, no. I had to deal with somebody who continues to say they want to improve but doesn't make the effort to do so outside of just show up and participate in real time. I mean, talk to them. Hey, you say that you want to improve, but it doesn't really look like you're really improving. You're really putting the effort. So what can I do to help you, to help motivate you? Or what can I do in my own time to help you improve? Do we need to spend more time reviewing? Is there anything that, like, can I be helping you in ranked more? Sometimes it doesn't feel like you're giving your all during scrims. So like, can I be helping you stay focused? Like you make not an accusation, but you diagnose the problem very frankly, but then you don't yell at the player. You're like, okay, what can I do to fix it? And if it's not fixed and it continues to be a problem, then you give them the boot. Goodbye. But you take responsibility for it first. If you only have 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for practice, how would you list it? Time, break it up. Hour review, scrim block. Hour review, scrim block. Hour review, scrim block. For team coaching. It'd probably be more like 45 minutes of review with a break. Like, you want reviews to be relatively, like, not super, super long and, like, focused with, like, scope. How do you break the fear of comp, especially for players who just need to play time to get the experience? Help explain to them, like, how scrims are, like, the real performance. Like, ranked is just there for you to practice clicking heads and practice your various cooldown usage and get comfortable with the hero, but scrim is the real thing. Scrim is the real deal. Like, ranked, this doesn't really matter all that much. Like, the scrim is the real competitive Overwatch. Ranked isn't competitive Overwatch. Ranked is barely, you know, pickup. You know what I'm saying? Like, even pickup baseball and football and basketball and soccer teams have better communication than ranked. Ranked is just meaningless. Like, yeah. So that's how I'd communicate it. Obviously easier said than done, but that's how you start. If you could only have one of the staff member outside of a GM and you as a head coach, what role is most critical to you? This has changed over time. I would say normally strategic coach, because historically strategy and macro understanding and, like, compositional stuff has not been my strong point, but I feel I have a strong understanding of the game right now. So right now I just need somebody that can help me do one-on-ones and help me with the micro stuff. So EasyBot's role is probably the one role I'd pick. So micro coaching. Just I need another monkey. That's pretty much it. Like to help me with the work. How did you go about getting your team to take ownership in not only their own play but the performance of the team as a whole? I mean, part of it is like making sure like what are your goals? You guys want to get better, right? You guys want to do better, right? Like you guys want to improve, and then if you do want to improve, then we're not improving. So this needs to be fixed, right? This is what we want, right? Like it's like the the whole Navy SEALs thing that I'm sure you read about. Like they're there because they want to be Navy SEALs, and people that actually get through the training because they want to be Navy SEAls. It's not because they're the strong and even necessarily the mentally tough, but they wanted to be Navy SEAls, so they were willing to do whatever it takes. So if you've got people that are like, take ownership in your own play, the performance of the team as a whole is like, you guys want to improve, you guys want to get to a higher level. This isn't happening. What do we need to do? Not just the adjustments, but what do you need to do? When we improved this week as Sheer Cold and got to the point to where really performing at a high level, we didn't improve because Shade stepped up, or I stepped up, or EasyBot stepped up, or Backbones. Every single player stepped up to a degree. And if any one of those players had not stepped up, it would have showed. We would not have done as well. So they need to understand that. Like teamwork is everybody having confidence that the other player is doing their best. You don't have to agree on everything, but that they're doing their best. That's rough though. Oh, what kind of things would you involve the players with that might make others might not have thought to involve them in, and what would you deem not worth their time or effort? I never really played games with players. I did that with a couple of my first teams, like, hey, you guys want to play Among Us, or you guys want to play, Scribbly, Dotto, or hey, you guys want to play some quick play? We'd screw around and have a good time, and I did a lot of that. I actually stopped doing that. I stopped playing games with the players for the most part. Instead, I'd just sit and talk with them. Like, we'd hang out, we'd talk politics, we'd talk life, we'd talk books. We would talk about, we'd end up half the time reviewing extra. Like I said, all right, no more review, guys, head off. And a couple of players will log off. And then, 2 hours later, me and Shade are just like hard in, just like going over a third-person POV just because we wanted to spend time with each other, And to me, that's where I felt like there was actually more like relationship building. And that is that is like an aspect of coaching that's kind of hard to put your finger on, but there was like trust built in that. Just like these honest conversations. Like they got to know me as a person. And, I think like you could say team bonding comes from playing games and stuff too, but like we definitely, I felt like I got a lot more out of just sitting and talking with players about stuff and hanging out in voice and talking about random stuff than I did playing games. So I would say don't worry about like playing silly games and silly team activities. Just talk, have conversations with the players. And obviously you can't force that, but I often found after scrims were often a great time if I had time. Would you ever be up for a boot camp type thing to help struggling teams get on their feet and really thrive? No, unfortunately not. That would be something I would take too much responsibility for. I would want teams to thrive, so I would put probably too much work in. And yeah, I don't want to do anything halfway. What kind of when a patch goes live, how do you go about figuring out if I change the code plus I mean, just look at the individual heroes. Hey, Brig is buffed. Is Dive now weaker, or Brawl now weaker because Brig is more of an anti-dive spam dive hybrid hero? Tracer is nerfed. Well, that screws Dive because Dive now does no damage. Is Monkey buffed? Okay, and so you really again just start with the individual heroes. Don't get overwhelmed. Start at the individual heroes. What heroes were buffed? What heroes were nerfed? What are their counters? What are the heroes that synergize well with them? And start with there. What would be a list of people to keep your eyes on for not only players, but staff as well? You guys want the juice? You guys want the juice? I'm fixing to whip out my list. So this is a fairly outdated list, but starting over a year ago, started making a list of players that I thought showed potential or were worth looking at. And I'll condense it to players that I think are really good, but I'll do it for you guys if you want. I think EasyBot and Thor were two coaches that I think especially work with. Like everybody knows Thor, or knows the work he does on macro. But I think EasyBot was a pleasant surprise for me. EasyBot was a huge clutch performer. In terms of players, all of Sheer Cold obviously. Like, I mean, I'm not even going to bother. I'm going to try and focus on players that I didn't coach. And you have to also keep in mind that some of these are players that I've not worked with. They might be toxic buttholes, but I don't know because I haven't worked with them. So keep whatever I say with a grain of salt. Let's see here. Fenzi. Very positive player. Very good off-tank. You know what? Actually, give me just a moment, chat. I'm going to type this up so you guys will... Give me a second. Give me just a second. Haha! A couple of these players are in Overwatch League. I had Adam from OCE on my my list. He just got picked up by Valiant. Here's a couple. This is far from comprehensive. But here's a couple on the list of players to kind of keep an eye on. Fenzi is somebody that I've liked for a long time. He tried with Boston a while back. was not interested in the academy team, and the main team already had an off tank, so it didn't end up working out. But positive guy, good off tank, definitely something to keep an eye on. I believe he worked with Team Envy and / Doge way back in the day. So he's a great guy. Vestola, the EU warlord. I mean, he's considered extremely strong mechanical off tank, one of the best in Europe. I don't know how his other heroes are and like what his communication is like, but he's considered very good. Milky Man, NA, I think has consistently been the key for Square One performing well. Again, I don't know a lot about his play, but that's something that somebody who I don't want to not highlight. Again, I'm not saying these are the best at their role. These are just players that I think that aren't talked about enough. Higan, Cucumber. I think people talk a lot about this guy, but I don't think they understand that this is Kaluge, of dubious past. But I've heard a lot of good things about him recently. His like player leadership and his like mentorship to the other guys, and obviously he's a phenomenal off tank, so somebody to keep an eye on. Naru, this is obviously another European off tank that you guys might not be aware of. Strong player, not talked about a lot. I think somebody worth keeping an eye on in Europe. Mudkip, NA flex support, good guy, very quiet but very competent, very mechanically strong, somebody to keep an eye on. Ultraviolet, also very young, not exactly underrated, but I have worked a lot with Ultraviolet, at least seen him a lot in trials and talked with him a lot in person. A little immature, but as he grows and improves himself as a player and a communicator, he's going to be really good. Fishcake, you guys probably know who this is, but he's a noble main support. Really good guy. Was with Dark Mode, I think, back in the day, but has really like stepped up his like his ult tracking and leadership, and he's very strong mechanically. He doesn't really have any terrible weaknesses either. Like, he was notorious to me anyway. Notorious is not the right word, but like, yeah, I recognize the fact that he wasn't a bad brig. When a lot of main supports were very bad brigs, he was not a bad brig, which was noticeable to me. Sky Reaper, I think most people know him, but he's over with Young and Beautiful in EU. Great flex support. Somebody that I've always thought was a great, very good mechanically. So we keep an eye on him as well. Nyang, this guy is an Australian contenders. He is Korean. Not a lot of people know this guy, but he's very good. I would keep an eye on him as well. I think he's playing for Blink Esports right now, but I would keep an eye on Yang. Sai is with Susanoo. That's how you pronounce it, or something like that. It's super weird pronunciation, but he's their flex DPS. Good kid, really good Genji. I don't know about his other flex DPS, but he seems to be pretty solid across the board. Seems like a good guy as well. Valen, South American contenders. I don't know who he's playing for now. Actually, let me see who he's playing for now. Valen Overwatch. Formerly playing for Karasuno. I don't know who he's playing for now. He's Argentinian. Was for Triumph. Keep an eye on this guy. He might be he was for a time the best South American player. And then Dynasty, and this guy's over with Revival. Really good calmer, relatively flexible, very intense player. I got to work with him briefly, and I have high respect for him as well. So again, this is not a comprehensive list of the best players, but just a couple of players that I appreciated, and I think deserve a little extra appreciation. No one from this month's winning teams? No, because everybody knows they're good. And like outside of Cucumber, but I'm not going to call out the obvious. Yeah. I'm mad. I'm salty about an announcement today. You guys saw Shockwave's announcement. I won't leak, but there was a period of time where I really wanted Shockwave for Uprising Academy, but something ended up not working out. But this was back when he was just with, I think, Raspberry Racers or whatever, way back in the day. And I was scouting, and I was like, dude, we got to pick this guy up. And we were too late. Like, I won't go into the details of the whole scenario, but I was super bummed. But I did scout I'm 37. I did scout Aztec. And there's a couple other players that I've scouted that I'm really proud of as well. 2 other players, like I said, in my Twit longer, who are going to be in Overwatch League. But I won't spoil who. I had a goal this year to coach 1 player in Overwatch League, and I've coached 4. So I'm pretty happy about that. I was super excited. Dons. Yeah, I love Dons. I'm not sure where he's up to now, but I know Revival replaced him with Gig, which just kind of sucks. But Dons is a great guy. I love the crap out of Dons. Is one of them me? Huh? What? Anyway, okay. I know I've answered this before, but one last time while we have here, is that one of the most critical things you can do as a head coach, what makes a head coach good, great? Just a good communicator, a good leader, and setting a structure that we always hammer on the pillars. So remember when I talked about making sure that we always had a good macro understanding, good shot calling and planning, and making sure there's like no like tension between the team, whatever, like in communicating and sorting out those arrows. That is what makes a great head coach. You don't have to be charismatic and great and wonderful and spunky, but you just have to make sure that whatever is most important on the team gets done. Week to week to week to week. How did I end up scouting Aztec? So I was in talks with Lori because I was coaching I'm 37 at the time, and I was looking for coaches to speak to, and I spoke with a certain person who works for Boston that I don't know is publicly announced, but who at least in the past worked for Boston. And this person in I'm 37 was like, hey, you should talk with Lori. He coaches some, WTS or a contenders team. They're pretty good, and I'm 37 had good things to talk with him. So I met up with Lori, and we met up with a translator, and we just swapped coaching ideas and philosophies, and I had a great time. And, I followed him, and I was kind of tracking to see how their team was doing. And there was some talk about like, oh, WGS, there's a guy got a player named Aztec, pretty good. So I took I reached out to Aztec. I was like, hey, are you interested in trialing? And because he was like, oh, I'm 37 plays with you guys, and I'm 37 had liked me as a coach, so he had good things to say about me as a coach, and obviously, he was relatively unknown at the time. Aztec was like, nobody really knew who he was. So he's like, yeah, sure, give it a shot. And he did really well in the trials, and so he was signed. So it was some connections, me kind of keeping my ears open, my ears to the floor, and getting him in trials. He's a great kid, though. I'm so happy that he's in Overwatch League. He put in really good work when he was with us. What is the most important thing for a developing team to learn? Teamwork, the power of teamwork, and the power of practicing compositions and not constantly changing and adjusting. Like, play a composition, have a couple swaps and adjustments that you make against different comps, and just practice it. So you can actually work on stuff and not just constantly popcorn every scrim block. That would be a really important thing to prioritize. When a player says they're a flex player, how do you determine if they really are and if they aren't? How do you figure out which way you should push them to focus? I mean, you scrim with them. There are not many DPS players that are truly flex. Backbone and Tap are 2 of the ones I would say are truly flexed with my time working with them. And that's just because I go, oh, wow, they are really good at this hero. And not only that, But the big thing that made Tap and Backbone special, and really their key to success, like you don't just, oh, I'm a flex player, ha ha ha, I'm lucky, I got the talent. But they were both players that grinded really hard. So, you know, we're like, Backbone, you're playing Sombra. He's like, okay. So he just goes play Sombra and nothing but Sombra and Sombra. Things with Tap and Tracer. That's how they're flex players. So you could tell a flex player if it's a person that's isn't able to play every hero necessarily right now, but that they are quick, they pick it up, they're smart, they're listener, they hustle, and they grind. And then obviously, you know, if you grind a hero for a week and a half, if you don't play the hero for 6 months, there's still going to be a decent amount of the knowledge ingrained in you. So a flex player is just somebody who's grinded a lot of different heroes individually and has got, you know, that kind of like muscle memory, not muscle memory, but just like that kind of knowledge built in. But honestly, there's no quick way to see. You just have to see, are they good or not? How'd you go about being a coach to player? Ooh, that's rough. I mean, as a player, I think the biggest thing I want to prioritize is trying to separate yourself from your own personal biases and try and find out like what are actually the most important things that we need to work on. But I mean, I would focus on your mental and how you are communicating, because obviously there's going to be some bias in there, and it's very important that the players don't interpret your feedback as bias. That is the biggest concern that I would have. Is the concept of a flex player even relevant anymore? It's more relevant now than it's ever been. It's more relevant now than it's ever been. Like right now, flex DPS is the most valuable role potentially in Overwatch, next to main tank. Because the hero pools have grown a little bit, and teams no longer are interested in specialists, and meta, based off of the fact that hero pool, like balance patches happen more frequently now, nobody has really solved the meta. Like we saw this yesterday with European contenders. We one-tricked Bat Brig. Some teams played a lot of Brawl. Some teams played a lot of Spam. Some teams played a lot of Dive. This is in the same patch. There's a lot of compositions that are playable, right? At least right now. So you need a flex DPS that can play a lot of different things, at least at the pro level. So flex player now more than ever is relevant. Just this week alone, Backbone is playing Mei, Backbone is playing Tracer, Backbone is playing Hanzo, Backbone is played Echo. And Backbone is played Doomfist as well. And Bastion, actually. Genji, oh yeah, Genji. I already said Mei, I think, but yeah, I didn't say Genji. He played Genji as well. That's just this week. And there's a lot of and honestly, for a period of time, flex DPS players were the Tracer players. And in the previous meta, they were the Sombra players. So just saying, oh, you're a projectile specialist, not anymore. In ranked, to climb to GM, yes, but if you're a pro player, no. Yes, hybrid comps are becoming a thing. Yes, very much so. What do you do when you call, you can find your take play, not a single flex support? I have no idea. That is not at all my my specialty. In terms of, I've told my team I want to go to full coach for next semester, but can't find a flex support. So do you think it'd be worth for me to actually go to full-time coach? I mean, I would prioritize more than anything else finding a flex support. Like I don't think being a hybrid player coach is something that's worth putting effort into. I'm sorry. I think that is something you want to avoid whenever you can. It is a pretty long grind, but you have to understand that they're not necessarily like somebody like Backbone. I know will be like, hey, listen, you're playing a lot of Hanzo, trust us, and so he'll hard grind Hanzo, right? And he'll play Tracer and a little bit of McCree and a little bit of Mei, right? But he's just gonna hard grind Hanzo, you know. And then next month he'll hard grind Sombra, and the next month he'll hard grind Pharah. But if you like, the thing is like, if you really hard grind a topic, it's a lot harder for you to forget it, even if it's been a long time. Yeah, rip Baggins. I'm sorry, man. What are the most valuable generic microtip you can give if such a thing exists? I mean, at the pro coaching level, individuals taking responsibility and making plans and plays with their ultimate is beyond important. Like, if I could say to every single player, talk about your ultimate, tell what you want to do with it, that would be a huge thing. Okay. Oh my gosh. How did you balance time dedicated to macro learning teaching with having teams practice the application of said macro? Since I assume players collectively adaptively make decision gaming as the final end goal. This is why having a basic macro is the most important thing to prioritize, because whenever I would say like tank cooldown usage, for example, in the Reaper Summer meta, I would give us some guidance with how I think the tank cooldowns should be used with Bubble and Matrix and things like that. But then I wouldn't sweat it so much if that adapted over time. If, you know, the players said, well, I think the Bubble is best used like this, and it makes more sense when I use Matrix like this. I was okay with that, as long as we were still focusing and thinking about our tank cooldowns, because regardless of how you use it, in that meta, tank cooldowns definitely had a really big impact on how well you did. So to me, it was balancing the time to explain why what we were learning was important, maybe giving them some guidance of how to execute it, and then if they made any adjustments on the fly, letting that go. For example, if I'm going to sit here and coach a GM player how to position himself, and he decides, okay, corners and cover, that's great, but I think actually in this situation, I can be more aggressive because, and I'm like, yeah, do it. I'm glad you're thinking about it. All I want you to do is think about it, right? I will give you the basics, the guidelines that I want you to adhere to, but all the details you figure out. And that's the balance. That's really the balance there, is that you're the leadership, you're the taskmaster that makes sure that they don't forget to think about it, and the teacher that gives them the starting base, and then they flower off of that. How can you help players think about these positioning more proactively and critically? How can you do it if your player on a team is also coaching it? I mean, it's in review. Like, what you could do in a review is just say, like, why, like, I think, obviously make sure that's doesn't come across as an accusation, but one of the big things that I would do is when I'd sit with players in a review and we were going over positioning, is I would ask the player, why were you positioned here? And let them explain their logic. And if they go, well, I don't really, why? What were the ultimates? What composition are you playing? What composition are you playing against? And then ultimately, I'd ask, is there a better place for you to position in this given set of circumstances? And make them think about it. And don't just give them the answer, but make them think about it. Because again, it's not just like you're force feeding them answers, but make them take ownership of finding the solution. I mean, they should know that corners and cover, and you know, if you think that they're like hard split from their team or they're too close to their team, you know, address that. But like they need to be in the habit in review of like actually solving problems. Yeah, exactly, Arho. And you could do that in review. Like I was sometimes during like my reviews were often very much, I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes and I'm going to lecture you guys and explain what I want us to work on and like why it works. And then oftentimes after that, like that initial like little burst explaining the basics and the fundamentals, I would shut up and get them to talk. You guys talk. You guys figure out the details. What do you guys think? And that happens in one-on-ones as well. At what point should a coach start focusing on micro more in addition to the necessary macro? I think for me, micro has always been something that I've gone over individually with players, because if you start spending too much time on micro with teams, they get bored because this doesn't really apply to me. So micro is your individual reviews, which should be happening like once or twice a week, something like that. Macro is something that you should be hammering on almost every day. Because there's a reason why they call it macro. It's not just because it's the big picture stuff, it's because it's generally the most important stuff. Everybody being on the same page, the basic goals of the composition, you know, because a lot of times if I say the basic goal of the composition is that everybody is using our cooldowns together and that, you know, we have our backline in a good position. Well, then now your backline's thinking about how they position, and now your frontline's thinking about like, I need to play around where the backline's position, and then now your backline's thinking about like, everybody uses everything together, so I want to be using my nade and sleep in this way because that's together, and it all revolves around the big goal, right? Oh, bless me. Okay, a fundamental issue with like equipment, I think it's I mean, assuming they're not playing on like a trackpad, you could climb to GM playing in a laptop. You just have to be good. So if a player has bad equipment, try and fix it. If they can't fix it, tell them that they need to improve. Like if they need to get a better mouse or a better mouse pad, whatever they need to do, but they need to improve. And if they just aren't getting better, then, you know, sayonara. But like you could do it. So, is it better to have players learn new heroes during metas, or should they try and bend the meta a little bit and play close to comfort picks even if it's worse? I mean, it depends on what the team wants to do. If the team thinks that they would have more fun playing to their strengths, then sure. If the team would like to expand their, knowledge, that's also fine. If I was more focused on winning, especially in the short term, I would definitely play to strengths. But if I'm more of like, hey, we're just here to have a good time, here to learn, we're here for the long run, then adapting to metas is certainly a way to improve and grow. Any tips for getting... They're plotting me. Can you guys hear that? Any tips for getting the team to respond to the in-game leader and strategy calling more, turning up a leader? Again, if they're not responding, maybe it's just a little bit of laziness on their end, but a lot of that comes from they need to understand how important it is to listen in situations where you lost fights because we didn't listen. And the same thing in turning up a leader, like helping the leader. And then honestly, a little bit of discipline. Like, guys, we're not listening. We're not listening. And if this is going to keep happening, then, like you're hurting your teammates, and like, get on their case. Like, not like you can whip out the whipping board, not much you can do, but like they need to understand that, like, why it's important, and that it's not cool if it's not done. Man, any other recommendations for non-copyright music? Classical, please. I think I might have had one. Okay, I'm good. We're good, chat. We're good. Ride of the Valkyries. Unidine stars. Shut up! Would ever consider stopping a scrim with the team is listening? Yes, but only in extreme circumstances. I have done it before, but not often. When you have a team with players who have misaligned goals, e.g. with one player wants to play for fun, another one wants to read the rest, one wants to try and reach contenders, what's the best course of action? Less playtime for the just for fun player? I mean, kick them if you can. Replace them if you can. Like, the goal should be to try and build a team with as many like-minded players. Not necessarily they agree on everything, but they all want to win. But if that's not going to work, then you need to find something of a middle ground. And ultimately be like, hey, listen, I know we all have different goals, but working together as a team is still the common goal, because if we're having more fun, it's because we're working together as a team. And if we're improving, it's because we're working together as a team. So we kind of find a middle ground between those two goals, right? Oh my gosh. You guys are killing my voice. Any recommendations for building a contact network with players, staff, coaches when moving into coaching? Have some guts. Almost the vast majority of people that I have connections with are because I just message and be like, hey, do you want to swap coaching ideas? Hey, would you want to be in my stream? Hey, do you want to do a video collaboration? Hey, you mind if I pick your brain with some ideas? Hey, do you mind looking over this document that I made about like coaching? Hey, just go. You got nothing to lose. I mean, that's a way to start anyway. Message, meet, talk, share content, get their advice, ask gameplay questions. Ask these questions to them. See what they have to say. You'd be surprised. A lot of coaches would take the time. Oh! If the meta is uncertain or rapidly changing, how much should the team focus on trying to predict the meta and set the trend, shift towards new meta, or stick with the old comp being played for the skip? I mean, it's a trichotomy. You have to find a balance. Generally, you want to try and be able to adjust. And a lot of times when we were adjusting, and I would reemphasize things like, hey guys, don't worry about solving all the nitty gritty. Just focus on the basics. Focus on the fundamentals. The details will come. We don't know if we're going to even be playing this comp, day after tomorrow. But our communication, our leadership will be there, right? Our ult planning and ult tracking will be there. So let's focus on that and let the details of whatever the heck we're playing right now just go for right now. There's a team SR level when we want to focus on, yeah, if you got a low SR team, the heroes that they're playing just don't matter quite as much, because they're never going to really get to the goal to where those extra 1 and 5 and 7 and 3% are going to really matter. For a team where a player handles the coaching, any thought on how to build team dynamic where teammates will reliably listen and trust the coaching, especially again, it's going to come down to how much can you prove to your players that you don't have an inherent bias. Like, there's a lot more to it than that, but that is by far the most important thing. Like, they have to respect you as a coach, not just as a fellow player, and that's where you have to work on removing your bias from it. When players don't really have that much time to play a review, but still want to improve, what's the best way to dedicate to ensuring they improve his intervals? I mean, make sure that they're being efficient with their time. Same kind of stuff that I coach when, you know, I do a VOD review for a random plat. You know, consistency with your ranked play, efficiency with your self-review, efficiency with your warm-up, and that's mostly it. Any thoughts on why NA coaching players as a whole tend to be shifting less in favor as opposed to Asian or even or you? Or I just imagine? I don't know. Like, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to humiliate anybody. But if you go into the North American trials teams and you compare Season 1 contenders trials this year, Noble, Revival, Karasuno, Montreal Academy, Uprising Academy, compare those teams and the rosters of those teams to NA trials right now, and even contenders as well. Contenders obviously as well. It's strange how big the gap is. So I'm not sure if it's so many players retiring or some players have been picked up, but EU has definitely picked up their game, and I have scrimbucks on this as well. We have scrimmed Square One, we have scrimmed Odyssey, we have scrimmed American Tornado, we have scrimmed, and this is with multiple teams I've worked with. The gap is just not there anymore. It's not. And in fact, I would, my gut tells me at least in the last couple of metas, this might change in the future metas, but at least in the last couple of metas, Europe has been better than NA. Like, straight up. I don't know why. I'm not sure why. I know that European leadership is pretty good. You can look at teams like Obey Alliance, Chow, and Helve, and stuff like that. You look at, you know, British Hurricane with their Fisher and Commander X coaching roster. I felt like I did a lot of good work with Sheer Cold. I know Ex Oblivione has a great player in coaching leadership. Young and Beautiful, those guys like really hustled and they've got good leader. Like, I don't know that a lot of NA teams have as good leadership. I know Joel, who's working for Susanoo, is a great coach, and I think that's part of the reason why they've looked a lot better. But I don't know a lot of leadership in NA that is done as well. NA has poached a lot of EU talent, exactly, and they're still not doing it. Yeah. NA is skinny, very skinny nowadays. I don't know why. At least I don't know for sure. If a player thinks that they are good on a hero, but they're really just not, is getting in the way of coaching, what's the best way to approach improvement? I mean, make them better. Like, you could tell them that they're not good, but like that still doesn't address the problem. Make them better. Hey, I'm great at this player. Well, you need to get better because we're not winning enough scrim blocks and we're not winning enough officials with the current level. And if that means that you need to hard carry your team more, then let's do it. But we're going to work on this player. We're going to get good at this hero. And in the process of improving, they're going to realize, hey, man, I wasn't that good, you know, a couple weeks ago or last month. Like, a lot of the times as a coach, you're not really concerned in the truth getting out. You're just interested in them players getting good and teams getting good. And when I mean truth, I don't mean being deceiving, but like, you're not really interested in, I'm right, you're wrong. You're just like, oh, it doesn't matter. We're just going to get better. That's all that matters. Yeah. I mean, I hesitate to say that because we might, you know, who knows? Gauntlet might come up and America might crush, or NA. But I would, it depends on the meta. I'd be shocked. I think American Tornado is a strong team. I think Odyssey's a strong team. But they're not as dominant as they used to be. Certainly. Should there be any formal communication for streams, or should just play it more or less freeform? I would say there should be there should be a communication structure, but it should be organic and it should be constantly improving. For example, you need to always have an ult tracker and you need to always have a plan. If you want to have a solo shot caller with everybody chiming in, if you have a lot of vocal players that all like speaking up, that's fine. But the goal should always be to whatever organic structure you choose, it needs to get better on a week-to-week basis. It cannot stay the same. It needs to get better. It needs to be better every week. So don't worry so much about the organic structure. Just worry about making it better. Because a lot of it just depends on the team. I'm going to be sad when we officially go off the active team. That's not a question. No, they're finding a way to balance the ping out, by the way. So there should not be a ping issue. What do you look for most in tryouts? What attributes are looking for the most? I mean, certainly mechanical advantage, mechanical knowledge, and communication by far. Because those are the two of the hardest to coach. Like, it's hard to coach mechanics. Like, it just takes a lot of time. And then the ability to communicate is something that's just kind of like built into a player. Not to say being like super vocal, but like communicating what's important. That stuff takes a lot of time to practice. Something like the meta knowledge and some of the micro details, you know, like that comes with time. But like if you can click heads and you are a good talker, that's it right there. Only the show matches across region? Oh, yeah, I'm not sure then. Coach the player to be good at communicating? A whole team? What? Yes, but that took months. And they got better, but they were already good to begin with. Like Sheercold were not bad communicators. They were fine at communicating. But if I were to pick up a bunch of mechanical warlords, but they're all kind of mediocre communicators, that would be a rough couple of months. Sheercold was already decent, but we made them better. And that's still, I've been working with Sheercold for, what, 4 months almost? Yeah, 4 months. I believe I was talking about Sheercold. I can't think off the top of my head. Who else would it be? Leadership is especially important with communication as well. Like, you don't want a lot of leaders on a team, but having a player that is extremely communicative and is good at like calling plans and plays is really valuable. There are several players and contenders who are not even that amazing mechanically, but they're such good communicators that they will join a team and the team instantly does better just because of that. Yeah, hey Josh. And a good leader also when it comes to communicating is somebody that's a good listener too. Like Shade was really good at not just I call the plans, I make the rules, but we're going to do this. What do you guys want to do? And then people would chime in and say, okay, I want a window like this, or I want to flex like this. And, you know, and like leaders, like energy is infectious, right? If you got one guy who's really intense, everybody else starts to generally talk. And if he's over talking people, then, you know, you need to dial it back. But that doesn't happen as often as you'd think. It's generally more contagious than it is overwhelming. What mindset should players have when approaching what teams they choose from? Should they always go whichever team has the best chance of winning? I mean, just for me, it was more of like, what team am I going to enjoy working with the most? Like, when I trialed the Sheercold, they were doing okay in scrims, and they're considered a decent team. But I just like their dynamic. I just like the players. They seem like good guys and had good attitudes, and so that's kind of where I went with it. You know, and there were other teams I trialed with that were, you know, more mechanically better and probably would produce better results. Or at least were producing better results, but I didn't care. I just wanted the team, especially at after Uprising Academy, where I could just relax, enjoy my time working, and that I would recommend that mindset to anybody, even somebody that wanted to like hard grind to Overwatch League. You obviously want a team that will challenge you, but you don't want a toxic working environment. What do you think warrants a player being kicked from a team, and what point a player not permitted? I mean, giving second chances, encouraging them, offering them solutions, offering them help to improve themselves, giving and doing everything you can, and then ultimately if they just refuse, then they're gone. Like for me, like I've kicked or benched players over stuff that, you know, the player's given an opportunity to improve and they've just proven themselves to be unworkable. But generally that's not the case. And you also have to understand that some of the players that have been difficult to work with, but I wanted to kick, but I didn't kick, were players that wanted to win and cared, but they just weren't very good at expressing themselves. Or they were too emotional. The EMFG thing of the fall. That stuff I was way more forgiving with. It's the lack of effort, not caring, being overly selfish that I had a lot less patience for. How do you balance bringing on unknown talent, unproven talent with reputable players that you could still find trials and button up a roster? I mean, trial the players. If their players are good, you know, maybe a little bit raw, but good, your smart players will recognize it, you know? Like when I brought in Aztac and Uprising Academy, it didn't take a genius for the Uprising Academy players that were remaining to go, hey, this guy's pretty good, you know? You know, he might not speak great English and might be a little clunky on his BAP, but he's a good player. how can I do anything if a player has IRL problems which influence their mental health and performance? Yes, you can. You can be a good friend to them. You can be encouraging to them. You can be patient to them, and supportive to them. This is probably the toughest question for me because I know as a professional Overwatch League level coach that I would have to be a little less patient with this stuff. But maybe that's why it's good that I didn't get the Overwatch League level opportunity, because there are multiple players that I have worked with that have had IRL issues that influence their mental health and performance. And I've always tried to be more than patient and with them, even at the expense of the team's performance a little bit. And that is not something that you can really do to the extent with a professional organization. But it came from me. I just care, man. I'm not the sweetest guy. I'm sorry, that came across super egotistical. But like, I legitimately cared about those players to an extent, and I just felt wrong not doing my best to help them. And I'm sure there would be times where the mental health would get to such an extent to where they would deserve kicking. And I've certainly gotten to that point. I've benched players over mentals, not mental stuff, but them not taking responsibility for it. But you have, even if I were to kick or bench a player, you would still have to be a support. They still deserve your support. You still talk with them, and What's the purpose of having other staff, such as assistant coach or analysts? At what point is one required? It's just stuff that needs to get done gets done. If I think that I would benefit from knowing map win percentages or compositional win percentages, or if I would benefit from having somebody help me understand macro strategies so we can adapt to a meta, or if I would benefit from having somebody help me with one-on-ones. But don't just get an assistant coach just because. I've done that a couple times. Analysts most notoriously, where I was like, man, I just can't use you. Like, I just don't care about your stats, and I just can't use your stats, and I don't feel like I'm going to get enough value out of your stuff. And part of it was because some of the analysts weren't super great. Like, they weren't really good at communicating their results or finding valuable results. But, sometimes it's just my own limitations but I'm not going to waste somebody else's time. But you just like, hey, I could use help with X, so I'm going to find somebody that can do X. Don't worry about like the archetypes of an analyst does this, and they can just, what do I need? Yeah. Any way to get consistent confidence coach? Okay. Any way to get consistent confidence coaching other than believing in yourself? Reps. Like, there's a fine line with confidence where part of it is learning how to mentally be tough, and then building confidence by just being good. Right? Like, I've generally always been a confident coach, but I have built more confidence by just getting good and practicing. So, yeah. Like, if I sit here and say, like, here's a hot take about mental health. Sitting down with somebody and saying, you're wonderful, you're great, you've done so much, you're so smart, only goes so far before it just comes across like self-righteous horse manure. The person that needs the encouragement, the person with low self-esteem, needs to actually feel like they've actually accomplished something. You need to accomplish something. I mean, that's part of the reason why I feel like we have, to an extent, a mental health epidemic right now, outside of things like health and diet and the stress of the world right now. But we have a lot of people that just don't do a whole lot. Not that they're necessarily lazy, but that there's, whether it's, the esports doesn't provide as much satisfaction as, real sports, or whether it's social media, there's a lot of just like, there's not as much of a feeling of I've really worked, I've grinded, and I've accomplished this. And like, that's, I think, missing a lot from everyday life. So like, confidence is a two-way street. You have to actually do something. That being said, there are people out there that accomplish a lot and they don't really feel confident. And I think that is clearly a mental problem, but I don't think it's always that. In my experience, I've had coaches that would level more independent, more spacey for management other than working with other coaches. Why do you think that is? I mean, they're just inexperienced and they just aren't as driven. Like, if you're an OD coach and you can't, and you just had bad experiences with every team you coach, or your team doesn't really appreciate your work, you just suck. Like, I could go with an OD coach and I'd be just fine. Like, I could rename myself to Poop Soap and use a voice changer and jump in any OD team and help them a lot. And nothing from my reputation. I would just know what to do. And there's a lot of coaches in OD that they just don't like. I mean, I didn't know anything about Overwatch team coaching. I don't know. So whatever. I don't know. I didn't know much about team. I knew a little bit about like communication, leadership, and stuff, and teaching, but not Overwatch coaching and esports coaching over Discord. Like, I didn't know anything about that. But you know, I got good. I learned how to do it, and yeah. How do you get in touch with other roles that you weren't as familiar with in coaching? Watching VODs, studying gameplay. I've watched hundreds of VOD reviews on YouTube. Hundreds. It's a lot of work. If you don't want to do it, if you don't want to, I mean, I can understand, but that's what I did. What is your approach to mid-match adjustments? Pay very close attention to player gut feelings. Because again, you're not in the game, and coach spectating is like bull crap. You can't see anything. So it's always delayed, and it's always from the spectator for the thing. There's no overhead. So if a player feels like this feels really bad, I feel like we need to be doing this. Yes, do it. Go for it. Like my mid-match coaching and officials has always been next to nothing. At least at the continuous level. Players make the mid-match adjustments, and you can obviously temper them and provide guidance and encouragement, but like you can't see anything. And so yeah. Very, very few mid-match adjustments have I ever brained myself. With the exception of the infamous Salt Shaker and Orisa, Reaper May, and Goats meta way back in the day with Phase 2. That was something I took responsibility for. Do you think it's possible for, say, Crest to go to Boston without making roster changes, make them a great team? I mean, I think you guys are sleeping on Boston, first of all. But I think, yes, Krusty would make Boston a better team. But you also have to understand that if Krusty were to go to Boston and there was to be conflict and people that wouldn't buy into his philosophy of winning and grinding, then players would be kicked. Like when Krusty went to Shock, players were kicked. And he signed other players that fit with his philosophy. So like, you look at somebody like Bill Belichick in the Patriots, who's considered to be one of the great coaches, and he signed Randy Moss, who was a notorious goofball, right? Show off. When Randy Moss played for the Patriots back in 2007, he was like a schoolboy. He behaved himself. If you and that's you either do that or you don't play. That's it. So when I go to Sheer Cold and I find a bunch of players with good attitudes and they work hard, there's no problems. Everybody's happy. We're gonna do better. But if I'd come to Sheer Cold and we had a bunch of clowns, then stuff would have happened. Hey Seth. Yeah, I mean, I don't. There's a lot of like every coach has, and the thing with Phil Jackson is like with Dennis Rodman, it's also like what you can get out of players. Like it's not necessarily that this player is bad, so he can't work for me. Different coaches work with different people. For like example, Dennis Rodman with Phil Jackson, Dennis Rodman would not have worked with the Bill Belichick style of coach. Bill Belichick probably would have kicked him because he wasn't really willing to compromise who he was. But Phil Jackson was the type of person who was more laid back, more easygoing, and he was able to build a winning philosophy through the antics of Dennis Rodman. So there's bad coaches and there's good coaches, but even amongst the good coaches there's different philosophies. Krusty, from what we know, is relatively strict, so I'd imagine that Krusty would not do well with the Dennis Rodman. We know that he doesn't do well with a player like Violet, who's notorious for being a little bit like a Dennis Rodman. Would it be applicable to lower teams where many mistakes through the basic ones might be happening? How would you adjust the situation to give more experience now? Like you don't want to be coaching generally during a match. You want to be providing reminders. All right, don't forget, guys, we got to have a plan. Or don't forget, these are the important things. And in confidence and encouragement. There's very little coaching that happens even in other sports, but certainly not in Overwatch when you have so little to see. I'm a coach from console now in PC coaching, and the meta on console is completely different from PC. It can be more difficult to understand sometimes because of console there isn't a lot of secondary coaching sources like Twitch streams, coaching, and understanding meta, nothing about or having a difficult time understanding. I feel like the answer is very self-explanatory. So the big thing I'd start with is don't worry about it if you don't fully understand the meta. Just try and learn it. I started learning right before Goats happened, and man, I was playing catch up with Goats, man. Everybody else had been playing Goats for a while. I was playing catch up, And a lot of the time, my coaching was, hey, make sure that we're on the same page. You know, are we using our bubbles properly? Could we be improving this? Are we focused on this? Or, you know, and obviously I got to where I had a good understanding of this by the end, but a lot of my coaching early on wasn't necessarily, we need to be doing this and this and this. Don't worry about that. Be an encouragement, help players to work, focus on the communication, everybody being on the same page, and learn. And just be a helper. Be an enabler. Like a lot of times, especially with my early couple teams, I wasn't captain, head coach, tough man, buff hard cheeks. You know, I was just there to help teams do better. You know, and that was hard for me because I was used to being captain, buff hard cheeks. You know, I just kind of had to be quiet and help. But you learn a lot from that way. Okay. If you sign a team player but end up regretting, what's the best way to approach it? Oh, man. I mean, make the player better. If the player doesn't work, kick him in the booty cheeks. That's it. Do the best you can, though. This is a question nobody seems to agree on with. I want to hear your opinion. Are there evils in Overwatch necessary? I don't know. I don't know. My problem with that question is it makes the assumption that somebody like Sigma is an evil. That's my opinion. Because you could just as easily say somebody like Tracer is an evil because she's easily more meta defining than Sigma is. At least in her current state with a fall off buff. So, I think that as an Overwatch game developer, you have to prioritize the most evil of the evils, the most unpopular of heroes, the Bastions, the old Symmetra, the pre-rework Brig, the frequency of BAP and Mortality Field, the level of Sigma Shield. You prioritize on making those less frustrating, but you will never remove all the nitty-gritty details because I play with this guy. There's a buddy of mine who I play with, and I would hate to call him out, but I'm going to call him out. But every single time I play with him, he complains about, oh, it's so like bullcrap, the McCree, man. Like how he has so much, oh, it's so bullcrap, Immortality Field. Like I can't get a, oh, Brig is so bullcrap, oh, Moira is so bullcrap, and Ana just nades the floor. And like there's always something to complain about. There's always something to complain about. It's just about chipping away at the worst parts. I think Overwatch has done, at least recently, has done a pretty good job at it. I like Tracer. I'm not saying remove or Tracer, but if you're saying that Tracer doesn't have cancerous parts about her, like the fact that she can snipe you from 20 yards away, that's obnoxious. I don't even think it's necessary. It's really annoying. So, I think there's very few heroes in Overwatch that aren't evil to at least somebody. I think Zenyatta, Winston, maybe Zarya, although I've heard a lot of people complain about Zarya. Those are a couple of heroes I think that are generally inoffensive. But yeah. Relating to the question above, is the hate for some characters in the game overblown? In a way, they have become a meme in of itself. Like, for example, Brig right now is not that cancer of a hero. At least with the HP back to 200 HP. She's not that cancer. She's not that hard to kill. She's relatively balanced. But people have hated Brig for so long, it's hard to not hate her. Same thing with Orisa. Her shield busts instantly. The Fortify rework made her more interesting to play. She's got, her halt isn't quite as busted, but people just hate Orisa because she was always this cancer. Like you look at somebody like Symmetra. Symmetra right now, not near as cancer, but she was awful at initial, like she was a terribly designed hero. Like just really poorly designed hero for a long time. So it's really hard for people to break those archetypes, especially when some of those heroes are infamous for being attractive to one tricks, right? When doing tryouts, I'm almost done, chat. We're almost there. Doing tryouts, and you've decided who you're bringing into the team, should you still give the other candidates their due number of tryouts? Like if you said each person will try for 2 scrims to make a decision. Yes, as long as it doesn't extend too long. You don't want to waste people's time if you know that they're not going to get the job. But you also want to do due diligence to make sure that they're not going to get the job. And then sometimes I would finish the trials with them if it was only like a day or two more, and then use that opportunity to give them feedback. So I didn't feel like I was fully wasting their time. Did you ever seek out mentorship? If so, how did that go? If not, what are things that you remember? Yes, all the time. In terms of mentorship, is in terms of people helping me and guiding me along and being there for me. That unfortunately was something that I did not receive a lot of in Overwatch. Like coaches are relatively close-lipped keep it close to their chest about a lot of their secrets and things that they've learned and done. You don't get a lot out of coaches, which is why I was trying to do this. I did, so I never really had a mentor. I never really had anybody that helped me or guided me, and it's part of the reason why it has been such a difficult journey for me. But I did have a lot of coaches offer advice along the way. Mineral with Boston. I talked a lot with Natter over at Third Impact Drifters. I worked with Lori. Temporal, the old strategic coach I used to work with, was an immense help to me. John Galt, a lot of people that not necessarily were at a higher level than I would, but I just wanted to know what they thought. Like there were a lot of contenders coaches I met with frequently and would swap ideas just because I wanted to know what they thought. And some of the stuff that they said, I think was a load of horse crap, and I think some of the stuff they heard me say was probably a load of horse crap. But it's okay. Like you swap ideas, you exchange ideas, and ultimately you become a better coach as a result of it. So yes, seeking out mentorship was something that I would have liked to have the opportunity to do that. I never really could find anybody, but at the very least, I found peers or people that were slightly better than I were, and I got encouragement and knowledge from them. And that's something that you can definitely do. Yeah. Most of them are happy to answer, but the answers aren't always very helpful, is what I was saying. Like, you never really get a true mentor. And I understand that. Like, if some tier 3 coach messaged me, like, hey, can you be my mentor? I'd be like, well, I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know how much time I'm able to develop, but yeah, it's tricky. Oh. King of the Hill control point map. My team has the point. 4 of my team die. What do? Do I retreat? Let them have the point to group up the team as quickly? I understand. I would try and stall point if I had the confidence that I could get out. For example, if I'm a tracer, then you could stall point out without dying, right? So you could stall point. Oh no, they're about to kill me. I blink out, and then you could recontest like instantly because you're already there alive, and your other 4 teams have respawned. But if you're like a Reinhardt, you probably would want to back up and give point. Or like very quickly back up and give point. Probably shouldn't have answered that question, but why not? As a player on a team without a coach, as in that was more gameplay, less coaching, but yeah, screw it. As a player on a team without a coach to provide a final verdict, what would you do if you and someone else on the team just won't see eye to eye on a topic? Example, which heroes would be a play against the main which will argue then give up or try and bring the outside education. You could try bringing in an outside educational resource, but that would just be to help provide information that you could come to a conclusion to. And if you need to be the one to compromise, that's okay. You could be like, listen, I don't agree, but I know that everybody being on the same page is more important. So if you want to give what you want to do a shot, I'm down for it. There you go. It sucks. Take the L, but you're a better teammate as a result. And people will build respect for you for that. They'll respect you for that. It's not a beta move. That's an alpha move. Different type of coaches. I'm not sure what this message means, but there's this micro, macro. I try and not force people to fit into an archetype. I just try and find coaches that have a really strong skill set that complements mine. For example, when I worked with EasyBot, who's continued to pipe up in chat, he wasn't exactly a one-on-one coach. That's what I initially thought he was. I was like, but he wasn't. Like, there were some heroes that he wasn't as good at one-on-oneing, but he also had a much bigger macro knowledge of Overwatch that was really helpful as well, that I wasn't planning. And he was also a mental performance coach, which I just had no idea that he was good at. But he was good at those. He was really good at those. So like, you need to find coaches that have a really strong skill set, and let them define their jobs. Like, find people. It's the same thing with players. Like, I'm not looking for a great Winston player. I'm just looking for a good tank player, man. And if they're really good at Orisa and Ball, and their Winston's a little shaky that need to work on, fine, we'll play around that. You want good players, good coaches. Even though it's hard, how in-depth are the topics that are brought up when coaching mechanics for a player? I mean, the thing with mechanics, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. It's often something that players are often really interested in learning, but it's a difficult topic to discuss. There are a lot of there's a lot of content out there on it. I know like Surefour has made a lot of videos. I know Carter OW is a big guy that puts out a lot of stuff on, or used to. But coaching mechanics for player is not something that I really devoted time into. I know enough about mechanics to get by, but I never really put a lot of emphasis on it. And it's something that more of an individual player can kind of look into himself. This Goich? What? Goich. Midget get wrecked, kid. What's the best mindset philosophy for team and or player improvement, e.g. stoicism? Compromise and a priority and synergy. I know I've hammered those things over and over and over again, but compromise and a desire to be synergize. How long, in other words, like prioritizing being together on the same page. How long do you think it takes for a well-coached, newly formed team to achieve decent synergy? There's a sentiment among Spitfire that Hurricanes experience gives a strong benefit for Overwatch League, and I wonder how much different that really makes compared to building a newest team instead of the team of the game. So here's the thing. A well-coached, newly formed team can achieve decent synergy in probably in a month. A decent amount of synergy to compete. So a team like British Hurricane has an advantage, but if you find talented, mechanically strong, like with experienced players with a good staff, they will be able to catch up of sorts quicker than you think. I love you too, Lap. There's a lot of teams that have worked together for a long time and never really gotten better because they never really put effort and emphasis on the synergy. They weren't really well coached and they didn't have a lot of leadership in game, and they never really changed that. So time together definitely helps, but time together helps only if you're actually doing the right things. So if you have a kind of a sloppy team and they play together for a year, they're not going to necessarily get much better. They might get slightly better accidentally. It's the same thing as, like, you know, you see all those platinum, you know, diamond border, you know, hard stuck silver mercy one tricks. You know what I'm saying? Or the Junkrat one trick that's never climbed out of plat. Has nothing to do with how much time they've spent. They've never really spent proper time. They've never really worked hard enough and focused hard enough. I think British Hurricane has a potential to do okay in Overwatch League, but yeah. Hey, ask another coaching related question. Yes, Baggins, you can. There is, Seth, but the Nightbot is probably sleeping. It does, if it just did a command, so it might be a little bit behind. It is metaphor, I think, without the E. Sword, hey Sword, my brother. Oh my gosh, I knew I forgot to message somebody. I've tried to message everybody that I've worked with or like hung out with, and I did not message Sword. Sword. Oh, that's you. I forgot that's your Twitch name. Holy crap, chat. This is Sword from Drifters and Third Impact, the guy that used to coach Blank back in the day over the Sydney LAN. Great guy. Almost like the only guy in esports that's actually better looking than I am. Yeah. Hey Sword, man. Thank you so much for your comment on Twitter. I haven't responded to a lot of them yet. Really any of them yet, actually. But yeah, man, I miss those Sydney days. Sword is the man. In your opinion, what do you think is the most important thing to teach a team that's just starting out within contenders? I mean, the most important thing is that they need to understand that, number one, the pillars, it's always better to prioritize stuff when you're playing a composition. So, for example, hey guys, I know we're new together. We're just getting in contenders. We're going to focus on teamwork, having a plan, everybody being on the same page, and knowing exactly what we're doing with the composition we're playing. The big picture stuff. I know I've hammered this home a lot, but it's worth repeating. If we're playing a brawl comp, knowing the most important aspects of our brawl comp. Whether that's the target focus, whether that's how we're using our wall or our bubbles, like what are the most important things? Not the 12, 15, 20 different, but the most important things. And you hammer on those again and again and again. From what I hear from you guys, Zenith was very good at that. Like, and you guys as a whole were very good at that. You guys had a good a good understanding of all the details, but the details come from understanding the big picture stuff. And for example, like in this meta with Sheer Cold, we prioritized a couple of like really important things with our rotations and with our communication. And man, we hammered on those. We got really good at those, and we performed really well. We performed really, really well. Use your intelligence as a metaphor. Using your intelligence as a metaphor, like it's like there isn't a metaphor, if you get my drift. Additionally, when you look for additional staff, what you look for to complement your coaching style. I mean, the first thing, like I said, was somebody that could help me. Like, at least recently, I felt my macro understanding was really strong. And it's really stepped up. So I looked for somebody who could help me out with the one-on-ones and spend extra time with players. So EasyBot was a natural choice. And then Thor was somebody who helped fill in my gaps with macro. But yeah, the most important thing is just like the importance of team synergy, the importance of having very, very basic fundamentals that you execute within your composition. Like I'm sure whenever you guys were infamous for your Brig, Lucio, McCree, May, that had to start with how do we use our walls, how do we take our angles, the tempo, right? All you guys were really good at always setting tempo with that composition, and then the shot calling, like the target calling stuff, right? Being decisive with your ults, and everything started from there. Like I'm sure all the details of like how to use your matrix and how to use your armor packs, like that came afterwards, but the big stuff starts there. Hey, awkward. Is this awkward OW the infamous flex support? I think it is. LG montage sounds. What coaches should one watch to learn more about the game? Natter's good when he does his reviews. Shoot, I'm gonna close down. I'm gonna see if I can find. I don't know why it was paused. I must have pushed a button. Shoot. There isn't a lot of good analysis out there, honestly. Who? Yeah, that's exactly what I said when people said awkward OW. Jeez, I don't know, man. There isn't a lot of good content out there. Yeah, sounds cool, Sword. I think what I would start with is really heavily abusing replays. Like once Overwatch, like even before Overwatch League comes out, like heavily abuse replays. Like you don't understand how much value can be found from studying how the pros do things. Like more so than like, hey, this is a pro analysis. Just look at what the players do and you try and figure out why they're doing it. Because like ultimately, like as a coach, it's not just about like what you know, it's about practicing learning from watching gameplay, right? So to me, Major Midget, if you're out here trying to like learn more about the game and like help your guides, even if it's more for ranked players, like go study. Go study, man. Go study. Like figure out the things like how do Sombras use their translocator and like how do divas are using the matrix, you know? Go study. Like I know you do that, but I think that's a good way to start. Overwatch League replays. The replay viewer, yes, you have access to that. Holy cow, my dog, my chat is barking. Oh my gosh. Dogs, all of you. This is why I'm glad I'm across the Atlantic. Like the disgusting lack of brain cellular activity is like contagious. Stay over there, man. But honestly, Major Midget, I don't know. I really don't know. It is a shame. I think you've danced around this question. Oh boy. If you feel like you've answered this well enough, feel free to skip. How do you know when you need to kick a player? When the player is unwilling to improve and has shown an incapability of improving the situation whatsoever. Like if it's been weeks and months and multiple reviews and multiple meetings and they just don't improve and they just don't show the drive to do anything, then, you know, I think they need to go. Why don't contenders replays get posted like Allen's? I don't know. It's a good question. I think it's probably too much work unnecessarily, but it is a shame. Thanks, Seth. I'm sorry if I'm missing messages. Hey, Lakshmi. How's it going, brother? But yeah, if the player refuses to improve, it's not about being bad. It's about that player, or even having a bad attitude, but being unwilling to improve. No, GG's. Yeah, let ref it is great. My man's third place EU contenders, actually second place because BH crapped the bed and gonna have a nice time in Gauntlet. Top 4 3 months in a row. Well, top 4 and then top 3. Poggers. What's the most important character trait skill that you learn as a coach to be flexible and adapt to multiple teams? There's no one, but I think there's 2. Number 1 is drive, like always wanting to improve. And that drive and willingness to improve is what helped keep me humble. Because I don't give the impression of as a humble guy. I don't consider myself a particularly humble guy, but I want to be good so badly and have for so long that I'm willing to take advice or coaching from anybody. Like when a player is like, I really don't like how we did this. I would have liked if we'd done this better, and maybe I'm not. Well, no, I'm the coach. Shut up, you little trash can. You do what I say. I want to listen. I want to hear their feedback, and I might not apply their feedback. Maybe their feedback is bad, but I want to know. I want to hear, and my willingness to just not suck up, but to, you know what, admit I made a mistake and do better next time has been my biggest ally by far. Because I have made a lot of mistakes. Like let's not pretend I haven't. I made a lot of mistakes, and I've done a lot of things, not as well as I could have or should have. And my willingness to like learn from those errors and move on is what has made me help me improve the most as a coach, more so than anything else. Because you're gonna make mistakes. Nobody just goes into coaching and just, hey, I don't make mistakes. You will make mistakes. You will do stupid stuff, even with good intentions. Like, I don't think I've ever maliciously done anything as a coach, but I've made mistakes. So, yeah, I mean, your first conversation easy about was like, hey, you kind of look like a clown over at Uprising Academy. What's the deal? And I had to sit there and play suck up to this scrub that was trialing for me, But it was a fair question. And, I always try to do better. Hey, Awkward, yes. Yeah. By the way, chat, if I miss your question, ! Submit, because I'm struggling to keep up with Twitch chat. So if I didn't answer your question and you really want it answered, ! Submit, get in my Discord, put it in the thing so I don't lose it. Is it possible to change the mentality of a group of players? Linking onto that, where the message is dealing with players with big use. Yes, it takes time. It starts with you explaining why whatever you are coaching or whatever you're leading is important, whether that's, a better attitude during scrims. Hey guys, we have a really crap attitude during scrims. If we have a crap attitude during scrims, we're gonna be less focused. If we're less focused, we're gonna improve less. If we're gonna improve less, we're gonna win less. If we win less, everybody's gonna be sad. So if we don't want to be sad, we have to have better attitudes during scrims. So let's work on that, right? And so you've not just said, guys, let's be a better attitude on scrim, but you actually like explain why, right? And you hammer that home and you do it again and again and again and again and again and there's buy-in. But you have to explain why. You can't just that's how it is, Dealing with players with big egos, I mean, you can utilize that. If a player has a big ego, hey, you want to get good? You want to get better? You want to do better? This is how you're going to do it. Or what can I do to help you get better? And I know you have a big ego, but you have to work with your team. It doesn't matter how good of it. I mean, you could put, flipping Jonak on a silver team, and they would still not be losing to platinum and diamond teams, So you can only carry so much. How are you going to improve your team? How are you going to be a better teammate so that your team as a whole does better, not just you? Legit noobs to UA every season? The thing was, Awkward, was our trial pool for the first round of Uprising Academy was not great. Was not good. It's because I don't want to spill the beans on anybody. I'll say what I can. The trial pool for the first round of Uprising Academy was whoever was left over from the open trials from Boston. And that led to our trial pool being smaller than it should have been. I learned afterwards that, first off, it wasn't my responsibility at the time. It was, okay, this is your player pool. I don't know. That was not my decision. What happened afterwards in March and April, after we realized that, hey, we suck. We can't suck anymore. We need to do better. I personally would go Liquipedia, NA trials, EU trials, NA contenders, EU contenders, and I would message individual players, be like, hey, can you send me a VOD? Are you interested in trialing? In fact, I think I actually might have messaged you at one point. And that's how we actually start to get better. But the unfortunate thing is at that point, our rep had already gone, and nobody wanted to play for this. So even though I was doing it the right way at that point, it was too late. We'd already shot ourselves in the foot. Unfortunate organizational decision that led to us getting a bad rep, that led to us recruiting the right way, not working as well. I mean, we still got good players. We still got, I'm 37. I think Doggo and 6 feet were decent. I think, Aztec was great, and we, Way Fast and Dreedro were also good players as well. I don't think talent and false where it was a problem at that point, but I could definitely see the first season, the inexperience certainly showed. Well, yeah, I don't know anything about the contracts, but after the first little bit, like based off of that initial not expanding our trial pool big enough, it really screwed us. Is it possible to change them? Oh, we already did that. If you could build a roster from scratch, what is your ideal formula of building a roster in terms of the type of players you'd want in a overall team? So I've talked about like how like mechanics is really important and communication is really important. I would certainly want at least one, maybe two players that are very vocal, like leadership, intense. They're good at shot calling. They call plans. They're good motivators. Maybe they're more experienced. I think that's an important thing that a team needs to have. I think every successful team has either had that to begin with or developed a player in that role. There's a lot of players that fit that archetype. And then you want players that are consistently good listeners, but also that fill the role well. I think that would be the best way of describing it. Is players that can communicate the important stuff, that are good mechanically, and then within those players having one or two that are exceptional at the leadership. At least one or two. You don't need everybody to be captain, chief, leadership, but yeah, that's the big thing. Players like to run their mouth. I know, absolutely. I'm just grateful that, like I said in my tweet longer, that everybody that was part of Uprising, once they've moved on from Uprising, that they've done very well afterwards. Like you look at your Lethals, your Dragon Eddies, Doggo, 6 feet, they've all accomplished great things. Inside and outside of Overwatch. And I'm very, very proud of those guys. Like the whole situation was extremely unfair. So I'm very grateful for that. What kind of salary would you need to teach 6 goals living in Appalachian Mountain Camp compound? Only non-negotiable dress code gotta be white robes. Asking for a friend. This sounds like budget KKK. I don't know about I don't think this is something I want to get involved in, man. Okay. No, thank you. All right, I'll be all right. Thank you, though. Did you know, Alfred? Oh my gosh. I got it. Hey, Sherman.
2 years woo woo wee woo. Very poggaroony doony.
Thank you for the 2 years, Sherman. Appreciate it, brother. You know, Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes, there's a Sherlock Holmes short story about the KKK. Did you guys know that? It's called The 5 Orange Pips. It's a good read. It's kind of a good read. From a player's point of view, is it better to choose a team in which you feel like you are underperforming, you're the worst player in a good team, or to choose a team in which you feel like you're overperforming? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the one where you're the worst player. Like, if you could get into a team where you're the worst player, that means that you're going to be constantly pushed in, like, how, like, the teams that you're playing, the reviews, your game knowledge, your performance. I mean, that's what you want to do. Obviously, you don't want it to be to a point to where you're overwhelmed and discouraged, but you want to be pushed. You want to be pushing your limits. So, of course, you want to be finding the more difficult team. I'm a little concerned because Lethal OW, I just type !Discord. So... oh, jeez. No, not 3 more months. I'm not sure how much longer we'll stream. We'll stream a little longer. I have answered estimate of, if we say one line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 15, 30, 40. I've got to have answered close to 70 questions, maybe more. Good gracious, my mouth. How would you approach helping a player deal with frustration, anger? What about getting too emotional, intense, and calms? How do you help the other players in the team if they feel overwhelmed by that player? So I would approach this how I would approach coaching players about nerves. So I'm one who deals a lot about nerves, right? I've always been somebody who really struggles with nerves and stomach issues. I don't throw up or anything, but I feel sick and I don't want to eat. And I think one of the great things that I was taught I've learned about mental health, not mental health, but like mental toughness, is it's nerves and feeling sick is okay. It means you care. Like if I'm nervous before a game, that's good. It means I care. If I care, that means that I've put in the work and will continue to put in the work to do well in the game or the venture that I'm pushing in. If you're nervous before an interview, that's good. That means that you care about the interview. That means that you probably are going to put the effort in. Like it's better to be nervous for an interview than not to be nervous because you just don't care that much, right? And the same thing I think applies with the frustration and anger. Frustration, anger, getting too emotional, too intense, that means you care, right? It means that the player care. Lethal, no! It means that you care about the game, about the individual, about the outcome. And so the way I would approach it is like, you care, that's good, but obviously, just like with nerves, there comes a caring, and then it comes to how you approach or what you do with those feelings, right? If you're frustrated or angry or getting too emotional, too intense, the feelings that are causing that are good, but how you're managing them is bad. You're shooting yourself in the foot. If I get too emotional, too intense and calm because I care too much, I'm actually making things worse. And so I think that's where you explain to the players, like, you're getting frustrated, you're getting angry. We need to practice dialing that back because you care about it, great. But if you really care about it, you're going to work on controlling that because ultimately that will lead to a better result in you being a better player. And obviously that's easier said than done, but those are conversations that you need to have, and that needs to be a goal for that individual like any other goal. That needs to be worked on. There's only 52? Okay. Some of those questions must have been longer than I thought. Hey, Beth, can I get the plug for the laptop? It's literally almost dead.
I'm almost dead.
Yeah.
Are you caring about me?
No, I don't care about you.
No,
Unlike the laptop, you do nothing for me.
No.
Would you prefer to join a team that is already succeeding or a team that's in the middle of the pack? A team at the bottom? That's a tough one.
Here's a tough one.
What? Oh, I see what you're saying recently.
Where does it go?
Oh, I see what you're saying recently. I misunderstood. I would probably say middle of the pack or at the bottom. I think the pressure on a team that's at the top is a lot more intense, whereas at the bottom in the middle, there's less expectation, so you're more free to just focus on doing a good job and letting the results speak for themselves. Like you look at somebody like Fisher with British Hurricane. I mean, how do you think that guy feels? He coaches a team that's literally never lost, and they look like dung heaps yesterday. It might have nothing to do with what he did. It might just be an unlucky day, but it still sucks, you know? So I think there has to be a balance, though, because if a team is so bad that they're just awful and it will be a complete impossible task the entire year to compete, or if a team is bad because another red flag you have to worry about, too, is that oftentimes with teams that are consistently bad, it's not just the coaching staff or the players that are bad, it's generally the management. It's the leadership at the very top that's rotten. Like poor decision-making, overstepping their boundaries, lots of things that can get in. So I would be comfortable joining a bottom tier team if I was confident the management were a bunch of clowns. If that makes any sense. So you have to be very careful. Very careful. I would say generally more middle of the pack or bottom, but I would have to have confidence in the management and the leadership, and obviously the players that I'd be coaching as well. You only asked 36. Oh, my bad. Only 36. My bad. I often just straight up disagree with people about games and stuff. Things like what map we want to pick based on the enemy team's hero pool or what we want to start with. How do I communicate my logic in a concise and clear way? And how do I react when they just ignore my logic? Okay, well, so I could already tell from your question that you've got an ego, which is not a bad thing, but you're an ego. You have quite the ego. And that might be a justifiable ego. You might legitimately be smarter and better than your teammates, but you have an ego. So your challenge is not for you to get smarter with hero pool and could be better, like, and convince your teammates more often. Your job is to be better at communicating your ideas, or to shut your mouth and be a better teammate. Now, I don't know what type of person you are. You could be either. You could legitimately be a relatively nice person that just needs to communicate your ideas better, or you could be a giant ape that drives your teammates nuts because you're insufferable. And it probably may be somewhere in between. And I've worked with both. So what I would do is I would say you could probably assume that both of the issue. Do a better job explaining, put some thought into it, prepare ahead of time. Take 2 minutes, think about, okay, what would be the best way? Why do I really feel like this composition is the best way of doing things for us? And then take time to explain as best as you can. Focus on how you're communicating clearly and you're being fair. If you need to ask for just a minute where no interruptions, you just explain it. That's fine too. But if there's reasonable concerns and nobody wants to do your idea, then I'm sorry, that's just it. You could also maybe talk with your team, be like, hey, would it be okay if we tried my idea just a couple times? Because it seems like my ideas get shot down a lot. Could it be hey, check this out, boys. Is it okay if we try a couple of my ideas? Because it feels like my ideas get shot down a lot. And again, if it doesn't work, we go on. But people always disregard my arguments by telling me that I just like to argue. I mean, you probably do then. You probably do. So then maybe you could be the person that provides good ideas. If it gets shut down, you're like, okay, yep, I just want to do what the team wants to do. I mean, that would be shocking, wouldn't it? How do you think they would react? Would they know how to react? They'd probably be shocked. Wow, okay. Wow, this kid isn't arguing with us for like the 900th time in a row. And the next time be like, hey, listen, do you mind if we just try one of my ideas just once to see how it goes? They'd probably be more open to it. Like, again, it's compromise. It's compromise. It's compromise, and then eventually you start to get a pretty good idea of what actually works. It's like if a doctor came up to me with a chainsaw, I was like, take the pill, I'd be like whipping out my, I'd be calling the cops, man. Doctor. I don't care if this pill would like make me beautiful and more beautiful and handsome. That guy's freaking me out. I'm not taking that pill. Heck no. Ski Coop sings the fall. Like, he's completely ruined his valuable product because his presentation is dog. So. Maybe your problem is your presentation. And that's not, I just needed butter. No, you just suck at communicating. Being bad at communicating is not a forgivable sin. Probably not tried hard enough. I mean, it's not just about effort, it's about putting effort in the right things. Or being consistent with it. So who knows? 103 Discord questions. Holy moly. How do you go over comp anxiety besides just playing the game? Like when I am Q low GM, and I get into 4.3.4K average game, I get nervous not feeling it belonging there, anything more than usual. Same thing happens when I trial for teams that I want to be, but tend to play worse than say it comes. I think you would benefit immensely from the competitive advantage YouTube channel. I'm going to post it one more time. You need to stay in the moment, focus on what's happening right now, and work on not worrying as much about the results. And I know that's hard to separate, but remember that your performance is a result of you focusing on the right things. So I'm going to post it in Twitch chat. This man will communicate my ideas better, or his ideas rather, better than I will. So I would recommend checking out some of his videos because his videos directly target that question. Okay. How important is rank for players' path to improvement? I mean, it's incredibly important. Like, there's a lot of teams out there with a lot of players that just say, hey, we don't even play ranked, man. We just screw around. We have a good time, But they got to the level to where they can do that by playing a lot of ranked. If you're a 4.3K peak player, you're never going to be on a contenders team. You need to get to 4.5 or 4.6K at least, and then you can afford to screw around. And even then, it's still not the optimal play. Like, there's a lot of teams out there that build their identity by being the clowns. We screw around, we play around, and we just have fun. And I think that there is a there's a method behind that madness, because a lot of times those teams coincidentally also happen to be very, very teams that are very good at listening to each other. I won't call out any names in terms of which teams I'm thinking of, but there are two that come to my mind immediately that are considered good teams. Don't really grind a lot, don't necessarily VOD review a lot, but they listen to each other and they trust each other. So to me, that's a great reminder that, hey, VOD reviews and stuff are great, ranked is great, but if you're not listening together, if you're not all on the same page, it doesn't matter a whole lot. So I would say ranked is very important for path to improvement. It's certainly important to sustain the high level of play. And to be the best, you have to put in the time. Like, you're not going to, you might get into Overwatch League without grinding a lot, but you're not going to stay there. But it also, the fact that there are some teams and contenders especially that do relatively well for not playing a lot of ranked, it is a sign for the rest of you guys out there grinding that grinding alone isn't good enough. You have to be a good teammate too. And there's a lot of teams that are overperforming by just being good teammates. And I think that's worth calling out. And there's teams that don't even have coaches. You know what I'm saying? I would 10 times rather have a team without a single coach, but with a bunch of really dedicated players that listen to each other and enjoy spending time with each other and hustle, than a team that's like not quite as motivated and has, like, you know, a 6-man coaching staff. 10 times rather have the former. Significantly more important. How does a team being bad or excellent affect evaluating individuals in the team? What roles are the most impacted by the team's level? That's a good question. I think a team being bad or excellent is certainly has an impact on how you look at the players. I think it has an impact in terms of the worst teams generally tend to have people that aren't as good at communicating. Like, there are several players, again, I'm not going to call out who I think are considered good contenders players, but their mechanics are just not that good. But they have been they've been playing for a winning good team for such a long time that they have this inner sense of, like, knowing what to communicate and what's important and what's worked for them. And I think you see that a lot with a lot of players. I think especially main tanks, main supports, anybody that's more of a shot caller, you'll be like, this guy has been part of a winning tradition for a while. They know what to call. They know the leadership. They know the mentality that they need to get the team into to do well. I remember when we trialed Tayo way back in the day at Uprising Academy before he got signed to Overwatch League. And he was coming from, crushing in Third Impact. And just the swagger and leadership and confidence that he brought into the team was unbelievable. And you can feel that from a team that's winning. And Tayo is a good player, but he wasn't like the greatest player of all time. He was just a good player, but there was an extra little bit in there that was from being part of a winning team, a winning tradition. So I think certainly main tanks are one of the ones that are affected the most because they are generally the people that set the tempo. They aren't always the most vocal, but they are the ones that set the tempo. The roles that are most impacted... yeah, that's what I would say. Hey, Dons. Yeah, Dons is one of those guys that I said was a terrible mechanical player and, just talks like... Yeah, Tayo had some serious swagger. I mean, he came in with it too. And you could that is where you see the winning, being a good player, being part of an organization that builds those kind of things. Like, you can feel it. You can just feel it, and it's infectious. Do you think that those teammate qualities are important enough to carry mechanical issues even in L? Absolutely. Like, I don't think they're enough to carry you being mediocre at mechanics. I think everybody in Overwatch League has to be good at mechanics. But there are unquestionably players and contenders that have better mechanics than people in Overwatch League, but aren't there because they don't have that. But in terms of, they aren't a good teammate. You can't talk after how I seen that Zen versus Doom fight mini Ike involved. Son of a gun. I beat you 6-0 on Zen versus Doomfist, and you go, oh, it's Black Forest, it doesn't count. And you're the one that was like making chips on Mauled and Doom. I'm just unbelievable at Zen, man. There's just no... I was embarrassing Hydran from American Tornado when he was knee higher than the Grasshopper, This didn't happen. Are there other team building activities that you help players work better together? I mentioned this one before, but I think it's worth bringing up again. Sitting down and having conversations with your players, sitting down and talking with them about how the scrims went, and talking politics and talking life, and like what they're working on in school and stuff like that. I found that is really, really fun. Leah, thank you for the follow. Like, that one was a big thing with me. It wasn't the screwing around and custom games, and it was legitimately just having conversations, and you can't really force those. So that's the definitely can't be like, let's sit down and have a conversation, son. It doesn't really work. But you could definitely put yourself, like, whether it's after scrims or whatever, just trust comes from that, and it's worth the time. Human centipede will make them closer. Yeah, but that's not something that I've tried. Given many opportunities, what are the most important things you could look for when comparing and deciding what team you prefer to join? This is something I talked about specifically in my tweet longer with Sheer Cold. They just had a good attitude. They had a good mental, not good mental, it was okay mental, but they had a good attitude, good environment, and they hustled. They wanted to be there. They weren't like the most intense, crazy team, but they just wanted to be there, and they had a good attitude. And it was somewhere like I knew that I was going to enjoy spending time there. And that was what made me go with Sheer Cold. And over time, that good environment led directly to wins, because it allowed me to do my job. It allowed, players to step up. It prevented, we avoided a lot of distractions that would have prevented us from doing better, stuff like that. Yeah, like the mental with us, we were definitely sheer choke, and we worked really hard at that instantly. First month that we started working on that. No more sheer choke. We became sheer clutch. Pretty quickly too. Like starting from the very first top 4 finish. We won a game, we lost, we looked like idiots, and we came back the next day hot. We never, after the first month of top 4, I don't think we ever had an official where we like beat ourselves super hardcore. This past month, we didn't have a single choke game. We didn't choke. We clutched. That took time. That was work. That was something that the entire coaching staff and all the players worked very hard at. What differentiates two players that are trying out for the same role? You said communication. What specifics for the different roles? Okay. For main tank, communication is really important in leadership. Off tank, I think flexibility is pretty important, because there's a lot of off tanks that are Sigma OTPs, but they can't play D.Va to save their life, and vice versa. For hit scan, I think it's also communication, but like it has a lot to do with mechanics and flexibility. I think DPS in general, mechanics and flexibility is really important. Like there's a lot of DPS that are very, very unflexible, and I think that is a big issue in today's Overwatch. I think DPS players just have to be flexible. Main support, good leadership, good communication, and consistency. I think with main support, I don't always necessarily look for a big playmaker with main support, just somebody who can consistently do his or her job. Flex support, I think same thing. But I think with flex support, it's also being communicative about the right things. Flex support is a position where it's very easy to just shut your mouth and focus on mechanics. But when you're talking about transcendence, when you're talking about Opera, when you're talking about your lamp usage in BAP Zen or BAP Brig metas, when you're talking about, your nade, I have sleep for primal, stuff like that, you can't be silent. So it's not just just communication. It's about the specific types of communication for different roles and just general flexibility. You guys played really well versus Obey. Calling out Alex. Alex is a good D.Va, man. Alex played really well during the Reaper Sombra meta. And same thing with Shade, man. Everyone's, they're Bat Brig spam OTPs. And then Shade, who's an awful monkey. Alex, who didn't have a lot of experience in D.Va. Backbone, who'd never played a day of Sombra in his life. And we smoked. And the same thing with the next meta, too, with Ball and Tracer. Shade, again, no experience in Ball. Grathen had, Backbone wasn't, we just got good. But thank you. I'm happy with our performance against Obey. I'm very disappointed. We had the momentum. And then Oasis, we screwed some stuff up that we just normally don't do. KS Crypto, thank you for the follow. Is a player being a strong segment and a strong D.Va carry over to playing Zarya, Hog, Balls OT? Yes, but Zarya and Hog haven't been as important for some time. And Zarya, Hog are generally not easier, but they're simpler. So they're simpler to learn. Diva and Sigma are very, very, very detailed, especially Diva, are extremely detail-oriented heroes. So like it's hard. It's easier to coach a Zarya than is a Diva, I would say, or a Sigma. But that is something that we obviously look at, of course, especially Zarya. OTPs aren't true off tanks. I mean, yeah, for sure. But everybody thinks that they can play everything, but not everybody can actually play everything. Like there's a lot of off tanks and contenders that I believe aren't as strong at all the heroes. Where somebody like Alex is legitimately strong at all the heroes. He has strengths. Obviously, his Sigma is his best hero, but he is not weak at Diva. He is not weak at Zarya. He is not weak at Hog. And he can actually play an okay ball too. So that is something that we do look at. You can only play ball, but see, that's just not true. Like your Rhine is good, your Orisa is excellent, your Winston is okay, and I think your Winston. And you, the thing is with you, Dons, is you actually have the hustle and the work ethic to actually get good at Winston. You're just like Shade. Like Shade was an awful Winston, but he wanted to do it, and you want to do it, and you will. Like when you need to, your Winston, I'm sure, will be fine. And in the next time the meta comes around and you play Winston again, your Winston won't be fine. It will be good. Okay. Any last questions? I'm going to continue for like another 5 or 10 minutes, but if I don't get any other questions in the Discord, I'm going to call it. Yeah, just tell the dog to pipe down. I'm sorry. This Turkish kid thinks that like people actually care about what he thinks. How am I doing? I'm doing all right. My throat's tired. It's been a long stream. YouTube, yes, for sure. Are there keystone heroes for other roles like Diva, Sigma to off tank? Yes. Main tank, you just have to be at least okay at everything. If you're bad at in any one hero, it's problematic. For flex DPS, I definitely think, Echo is one, Pharah is another, Tracer is actually one as well. Because everybody knows they can play Genji and stuff, but like, having a good Tracer is a real boon. For hit scan, it's the Ashe, the Tracer. Actually, having a player that can play Sombra is also really attractive as well. Like, it doesn't matter if they're flex or hit scan, but if you can play a good Sombra, it's nice. It's something that we like to see. For main support, we're no longer at a point in time where main supports are allowed to be bad at Brig. That's just inexcusable at this point in the game. Same thing with flex supports and Moira. Like, you don't have to be a great Moira, but just being a bad Moira is just inexcusable. Also, BAP is another hero that flex supports should be good at as well. There's no excuse to be bad at BAP. How do I join a team as a low diamond player? Discords. Elo Hell, Overwatch Open Division. I don't know the links to all those, but I would start there. Become content creator only? Unlikely. I will probably dabble in streaming, but I don't have the motivation to go full hard mode on the content creation, and I don't think it Client speech? You can't even spell client correctly. At least clients can actually perform basic tasks, you moron. Sheer. What does the sheer client thing even mean? It's hell way of saying client. Yeah, because main tank can't spell. Haha. Will you still do live VOD reviews like the kind of gets uploaded? Likely, at least for the. I'm not doing anything this week. I'm taking this week off. But when I come back, yes, at least for the short term. I am gonna catch up on all the VOD reviews. Probably do them for another month or two. But after that, long term, I'm not sure. And voice says Clint. Yeah, I can hear him say that. Professional vlogger. Yeah, exactly. Instagram influencer. No, it's okay. I don't want anybody to look at my butt. Oh, we got another question. How do you deal with the stress? Do I have a robust support net? Okay, here's how I deal with the stress. Number one, I don't do a great job at it. And number two, Pepper. Like, legitimately. My support net, I have a great family, but, they're out of state, so I don't see them much. It's Pepper. It's my wife. It's like, she's just amazing. She is my support net. And that and God, that's basically it. I got the two people that the two entities, I guess, that are the most important, and then everything else is just, it is what it is. I walk a lonely road. Okay, sorry. Support, posture, my bad. Hoping to see you around still in Overwatch, even if it's just occasional streaming a few matches here and there. Excited to see a fellow lad go. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. You too as well. I know. Like I'm getting a lot of attention right now, but it is tier 2 coaching right now across the board has been rough on everybody. So it's not just about me. Not you. Sorry, who is speaking? Pepper Entity. Yeah. It's a task. Yeah. How do you study the game to better understand how to play certain comps and why they are being ran? What about how to play how best to play specific heroes to help coach players in the individual gameplay? So a lot of it is when I first started, that was a real tricky thing. So that spent a lot of time studying VODs and trying to study replay, or just like VODs, because replays weren't a thing back then. But I've had the advantage of once you actually get into the competitive scene, whether that's tier 3, tier 2, like even GM scrims, you generally have players have a better understanding, and coaches start to have a better understanding of what heroes are good and why they're good. So initially, focus on being open, listening, learning, and studying, and then it will get easier as time goes on. What about how to play best specific heroes to help coach players in the individual? Again, replays. And don't worry about how to best play specific heroes. When you're first getting into coaching, your job should not be to coach players to be the best. They should be to coach players to be better. So if I'm coaching a Widowmaker player that's always taking flanks, maybe that's not the best way to play Widowmaker in this meta, is to hard flank. But I want to make that, if that's how the player likes to play and is comfort playing, then I want to make that player play better at that playstyle. Whether cooldown usage, the communication, how they use their ultimate, how their angles or when their angles are. So just focus on making them better. Right? That's the more important thing. Don't worry about like, no. This is how you play the hero best. Trust me. You're an idiot. Trust me. It's not that hard. And not only are you making it hard on yourself, you're making it hard on the player. How did you acquire a wife? Any advice? Well, remember the whole story about me washing up on the ocean, the beach on a shell with my long flowing hair? There was a woman there. She goes, "That's the hottest man I've ever seen in her life," and I was. And then she married me. I get stage fright when it comes to trying out for new teams. My mechanics of fighting communication takes a nosedive. How do you beat this out of your players? Yes, we had some problems with choking, like sheer choke. We had some performance and confidence issues with Uprising Academy. We made it into contenders twice and almost made playoffs because I worked at that. I recommend checking out that competitive advantage coaching on YouTube. And he goes more into the details of that. But mostly it's about, finding a routine, focusing on the right things, and not worrying so much about your performance and focusing more on just what you see and reading and reacting. It's a very complicated subject, though, and I don't think I'm going to do it justice in the short amount of time. What do you think about the terms main and flex support? I think they're outdated. I think they're fine. Flex support is just the guy that you generally want clicking heads. Main support is not. I don't think the terms... Maybe the names main and flex aren't exactly very descriptive, but when people say flex support, they mean aim support. When people say main support, they mean ult tracking beta support. I'm just kidding. The terms themselves maybe aren't accurate, but the categories that go with those terms have stayed updated. Do you think starting a new team as a coach is worth it? I mean, I've never really done that. Like I've the closest I've done to that was with Uprising Academy, but I don't. That was kind of such an unusual circumstance. I can't really provide input on that. Yeah, Mari's back here. Do you guys see her? You can see her. She's just sitting back here. Yeah, Reddit Lucios are alpha. No, Reddit Lucios are too dumb to even have brainwaves. That alpha, beta, there are no brainwaves. They're just not there. Hey, kitty. She sits in my lap a lot whenever I'm working. How do you learn how to send seld VOD reviews? How do I learn micro on my own as a player? Especially in scrim VODs of good players are difficult to get a hold of. I mean, just practice. Like, I would start with plats, golds, diamonds. Just start practicing. Offer them for free. I used to look on Reddit /Overwatch University all the time. And I would just, like, go in there and offer to coach them for free, and there you go. And I got better and better and better and more confident. And obviously I'd study other people's VODs as well, so I got more comfortable with the micros of the different heroes. But yeah, and there are some concepts that are across the board, like positioning and angles and you know, synchronizing with your team's pressure that are not hero specific, but you can still coach on as if they were micro. Did I ever get Al offers? Yes. Oh, one little thing that I wanted to share before I go. One thing I have found extremely valuable for scrim feedback, because nobody's really asked me about scrim feedback, but scrim feedback is something that I've improved on a lot. Keep it simple, keep it basic, and use your print screen function. This is what I would do. I would hit print screen. I go to paint. I control V. And I'd go, all right, guys. All right, so you could see, like, I would print screen whenever I saw an error or something that we did really good or really bad or whatever in the middle of a scrim. I'd be like, all right, so you could see how, like, you know, shade is over here, but you see how, like, there's this huge gap. Well, I wouldn't actually say this. We'd be in scrim, and I would, you know, draw up something. I'd be like, shade's here, but I want him here because the gap between the two is too big, right? And then I'd draw this up, I'd save it, and I'd post it in our team chat. And then when the round ended, I'd be like, all right, guys, jump in team chat. Look at the picture I posted. Do you see how, like, where Shade is positioned in relation to his team? Do you see how the gap was too big? What I want us to do in the next map is, first off, I'd try to make sure it wasn't just map specific, but it was, like, something that was relevant for the next map, too. I want us to close that gap whenever possible. It doesn't make a lot of sense, you know, and that's how I would get feedback. I would, because I realized that, like, saying, all right, Shade, you remember on second point when you were near the tower and then no, take a picture of what you see wrong or right, throw it in team chat, draw on it, and then when they're and then even if at the expense of seeing what's happening during, you don't need to see every second of the scrim. And then when the round is done, they can go back and they can look at it and go, oh yeah, shoot, you're right. I didn't even realize he was that far away. And you could do that with, yeah, exactly. You do that with chokes or rotations. You could do that with micro positioning. It'd be a macro, like, okay, we as a team need to stop doing this rotate. Or it could be, you know, looser. What are you doing over there? You should have been, you know, here. Like, do you understand? Like, look at, you see there Genji? He's already flanking you and you didn't even react to that. So, like, it was a very, very, very helpful thing that I discovered recently. I really recommend utilizing print screen. The more relevant and accessible you can make your feedback, the more valuable it will be. Can I tease my next dance music video? No. How do you learn a self-VOD review when it comes to... Oh, self-VOD review. I'm sorry. I missed this question. Self-VOD review, practice, reps. Make yourself better by looking at your mistakes and assume that every team fight that you could have done something better and try and figure out what it was. Was it your positioning? Was it your cooldown usage? Was where you're positioned the best that you could have positioned in the circumstances? Were the cooldowns that you use the best use for those cooldowns given the circumstances? And that's and you do it methodically. I don't know. What is Lethal doing? Goofball. Can you dissect your first, what did players do that hooked you when the head coach picked them up? Oh, I mean, players who just had a good attitude and it just felt like they were hustling. You know, that's part of the reason why communication is attractive, because you could tell players hustling, like really in there. You know, they might be making mistakes, but they want to be there. Like you could coach a lot, but what you really can't coach for is a love for the game, you know, and a desire to be there. If they don't want to, they don't want to, and that's just kind of how it is. Like that's when you end up kicking people. But like you try and get a feel for if they really want to be there, you know. I just started coaching players that are better players than me. Oh boy, welcome to the club. In the past, I had an easier time because I could just teach what I would do, but now I am a bit confused. I'm a bit confused how to be a good coach for them. What should I focus on to offer meaningful feedback and leadership? Just focus on, like I said, the pillars of making sure everybody's on the same page, getting discussion during reviews. Don't worry about the micro details as much. They're better players than you. Don't worry about it. Instead, focus on making sure they're all on the same page. Spark lead discussions of like how we're solving different problems that the team might have. Again, especially when I first got started in coaching and I wasn't really confident in my micro and macro, I would make sure that conversations were had. You know, I'd take responsibility for those conversations being had. I wouldn't always know the answers, but I'd be like, guys, we got to talk about this. I don't know what we're going to do, but we need to talk about this because this is clearly a problem. And that would be a big start. Also, how do you think I should offer feedback to individual players? Docs the notes in the scrim block. One-on-one live VOD reviews are almost always better. I think documents with notes and stuff is, to me, it's more of a supplementary resource, but it's not. This shouldn't be the source of the coaching itself. You need conversations. They need to explain why they did that, and then you explain why they shouldn't, or why, okay, yeah, that's actually a good idea, but here's what might be better. Maybe you should try this, or what do you think about this? It needs to be conversations. And ultimately, even if you're not very good at that, that is such an important skill. Posture check, sorry. That is such an important skill as a coach that you need to start now. You might as well start now. Head coach or not, you need to start now, learning how to communicate better. I'm sorry, recently. It was how I applied it in Overwatch with screenshots. That was fun. Okay. How should comms be set up in a scrim environment? Start scrimming with their message, not sure what to say when. Focus on ult tracking as soon as the fight's done. What else do they have? And then what do we want to do? What do we want to do? And then where do we want to set up to do it? That's it. Ult tracking, so you know what they're going to do. Don't just ult track it, just turn off your brain. Ult track, okay, they're going to do this. Okay, this is what we want to do about it. What are they going to do? What are we going to do? And where are we going to do it? Those three things. That's all you have to worry about. Everything else is little nitty-gritty details and flavor. You can figure that out now. It depends on the team-to-team basis. Team-to-team basis. Don't worry about it. My hair is getting progressively worse. Okay, I might answer like one or two more questions, then we're going to go. Oh, there you go. What? So, Swidermanin, thank you for the follow. Sweetermanin. I probably butchered that pronunciation. Forgive me. I'm American. Spot becomes his very first master using paint for coaching. Shut up! Backins. You guys are awful. You guys are awful. Alright, we got somebody typing up, so I'm going to let them type up, and then I'm going to call it. No more questions. I've officially drawn the deadline. So whoever's typing, I'm going to let them finish typing, then I'm going to call GG's. I didn't pick you. It was more of a, I have nothing but you. So, like, that's like saying, you're holding me at knife point. Yeah, sure. I gave him my wallet because I wanted to give it to him. End before lock. I'm not even locking. I'm not good enough at bothering with the Discord. So, several people are typing, no, stop, please, have mercy. How make good times? Drink lots of alcohol. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. I've never drunk alcohol. Fun fact. Never. Outside of, like, NyQuil or whatever. Most people don't know that. Yeah. And I've only smoked 600 cigarettes. No, I'm just kidding. Just go. Thank you recently. Well, hang on. There's people typing, so let them type. Why are you Pepe hands? Oh. How do you stay consistent? By being consistent with your training. And you're with your coaching. If you give a lot of effort today, but not a lot of effort tomorrow, that needs to be changed. Your consistent results come from consistent training. And being consistent with your other habits outside of coaching too, whether it's sleep or whatever else. With the support being the ultimate beta part of the team. What's the best way to stand out in terms of tier 3 being looked at by tier teams as the main support? I joke though. Honestly, main support, the best way to be is to be like a good communicator. Like if you're a good shot caller, be a shot caller. Main support shot callers are absolutely a thing. Be consistent with your ult tracking and be good and flexible with your mechanics. So I mean everything, mechanics, flexibility, communication. And with main support, being a beta was just a joke. It's not actually a beta position. There's no beta positions. I've worked with some main supports that were like alpha Chad shot callers. Oh, I did miss Pickle's question. How should comms be set up in a scrim environment? Yeah, I answered that one. All right, close it. How have your teams generally handled shot calling in game? And almost always the main tank calling, the initial fight plans and movement rotations are usually more fluid. It's more fluid depending on player strengths. I like main tanks being more vocal, and I have worked with several vocal main tanks, but it is more fluid based off of player strengths. I had the opportunity to work with an Overwatch League level player a while back. I'm not going to go into more details. And this player was Alpha Chad, super caller, calmer, and it was awesome. I loved working with this player. And he wasn't main tank, but he was a leader. So I think it just depends. But you do need the leadership. How do I deflate your ego? I mean, it's okay to have an ego, but just be egotistical enough to want to take feedback. Like, it was the same thing with me. I've got an ego. I'm not amazingly humble, but I've got such a big ego that I want to get really good. And so I want to get really good, so I take feedback because I know that's how I'm going to get really good. I believe that's how I'm going to get good, so I don't mind people prodding my ego. I might feel badly about it, but I got to swallow my pride and get, because I've got such a big ego, I want to be good. It's like saying, well, I don't want to practice backflips because I'm going to look stupid. Well, if you want to get good at backflips, you're going to have to look stupid for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? No, Fusions is main tank. I said not main tank. Not main tank. Not main tank. Not main tank. Morons. All right. Hate you guys. You guys suck. All right. What a exhausting 3.5 hours. Good gracious. I have done more than my share of answering questions. I'm going to close the channel for now. There is a chance that we'll open back up for future questions, but it is unlikely.